Hello and welcome once again to the Tetracast. This is RPG Site's weekly podcast where we get the site staff together to talk about our favorite genre of video games. My name is Brian Vitale. We've got the usual crew here today. Let's go through them. We have George Foster.
Hello, everyone.
Josh Torres.
Everything happened this week. That's it. This is the avalanche.
This is the week.
Yeah, this is the week.
Adam Vitale.
Hey, guys.
And James Galizio.
Maybe we'll be done recording by this time next week.
Yeah, so anyone that listened to last week's podcast, we were like, there's not a lot to talk about, like not a lot of news. Let's just spend an hour talking about Nocturne and then an hour talking about Final Fantasy XI, two games from the early aughts, we just had to fill the space with. And I think we had some great discussions, but now it seems like the world has corrected itself. It's like, oh, you want more topics to talk about, huh? So we got a deluge of stuff out of the Dragon Quest 35th anniversary event. We had a Metal Max 30th anniversary event, I believe. We had some Monster Hunter from their digital event, some surprise Pokemon news, some other stuff that fell through. Oh yeah, the Sonic event, which we'll talk about in a very minor way. So it seems like the summer of E3, not E3, Game Fest, whatever you want to call it, is here in some form.
Yeah. Fest.
Yes. And we have like the Xbox event to look forward to, E3 itself, whatever it's going to look like this year to look forward to. So yeah, a lot of stuff to go through, and we will have to somehow figure out our way to comb through it. So we won't probably spend quite as long talking about video games we've been playing this week before we get into the big topical rollout and discussion. But we still want to start with that, as we always do. Here is something that we kind of teased last week, but we didn't talk about because Mr. George wasn't here to regale us about it. So a recent RPG that we had kind of been hyped for, is that the right word? It feels weird to say it in retrospect.
We'll get into it. I think
I was
anticipating.
Yeah, it's like, okay, it's a brand new thing. It's not a sequel. It's from a relatively small studio and with big ambitions. What are we talking about, George?
Biomutant.
All right. So here we go. I'm hyped.
George, you are the one that has played Biomutant, so we're like, we don't want to just like adopt other people's opinions, but we do want to hear yours. Tell us about your time with Biomutant.
Okay. I feel like so many of the times I review a game, I come on the podcast, I'm like, I do a big sigh. I'm like, it wasn't that good. Biomutant isn't bad, but considering how excited I was, considering how exciting it looked, it's a letdown.
Do you think this is a systemic problem, George, of like marketing campaign cycles raising your expectations?
I think maybe I'm the worst person to ask about that because my expectations are always sky high. I'm always hyped about everything, but it doesn't take much for games to like. I still walk away happy. I walked away from Biomutant literally sad. Like I finished it and I was like, I don't want to talk about this. I don't want to write about it. But I guess I should go into why.
This is like the first game from this new studio. This was published by THQ Nordic, and I'm forgetting the studio's name, but I think
Experiment
it's like
101. Yeah, the first game.
They're kind of named after the project in an indirect way. So
yeah.
That was better than like Balan Studio or something. So it could have been worse.
Yeah.
So that's a good place to start as well. The team making Biomutant is very small compared to like normal. I think it's either 20 or 40. And I have to give props there. Like, I do have to give props because it is quite a big game. It's ambitious in many ways. But overall, like, I can't really let that colour my feelings. I still gotta, speak the truth or whatever. So let's start with the story, the sort of setup. You play as a sort of one-eyed shinobi. You're a little, like, rabbity, furry creature thing. Not that kind of furry, just, texture. And you return to this land, this area, many years after like a childhood tragedy, like sent you packing away. And then you get there and you're basically told, oh, the tree of life, which sustains all life, it's dying. So go kill these 4 big beasts that are kind of destroying it, and then avenge your family by, killing this other guy, and also choose like one of these tribes, like align yourself. Are you good? Are you bad? And yeah, that's about it. It doesn't like really go anywhere. You don't. The ending, like, I won't say it obviously, but it's just really weird and confusing. Like, not in the sense of like, oh, what does this mean? Like, in the sense of like what was the point of that? Like, how did this just end? Like, it just ended out of nowhere. Oh god, there's so much to unpack. Right, so I'll start positive. So character customization, really good, really really cool. So you get a bunch like choices between like just how you want to be, how you want to play the game. So like if you want to be focused on shooting or two-handed weapons or one-handed weapons, and it does feel like there's a genuine difference between like the classes you choose and the sort of breed you choose. So it's not just like looks; it affects your starting stats and also affects some of the skills you get.
What about your actual appearances? Like, do you if you like scale like your legs or your arms to a certain way, do they have like inherent buffs as you play?
Yeah. So that's one of the cooler things is that each class looks different to start with, and then you can kind of like scale it, and it does actually affect like if you give yourself like longer legs, you're a bit faster, that sort of thing. It's not.
That's actually kind of neat.
Yeah. It was a cool thing. And I'll admit straight away that when I finished the game, I did actually want to, and I did as well, go back and try out like a different class. Like it does invite customization. It does invite creativity, I think. But it's not limiting either. So I didn't feel like, spoilers here, but if you choose melee weapons for this game, you're totally screwing yourself over.
I was going to ask, is the character like just a player avatar, or do they speak and have their own personality and everything like that?
Well, this is so like hard to choose where to go because Biomutant has so many like when you mention one thing, there's as it's an ambitious game, there's loads of different paths to talk about. So it's basically an avatar, but you choose your morality, and that sucks. And I will get to that. And there aren't actually voices in the game. It's all done by a narrator who like narrates literally everything, and that also sucks. So I will get to that as well. Yeah, okay. This is what I mean. So many cool ideas, but like on paper, it's flubbed. But yeah, So you make your character, you choose your class. Really cool. Like genuinely, like quite a lot of options, and that carries on later into the game. Like. You choose how you allocate your stats, you choose how you allocate your points, and it's really interesting to mess around with. So there are these powers, you get like mutations, like you can shoot fire, or you can like create little mushrooms you can bounce off, and they're not all effective, but they're all interesting, and they're all like cool. They're nice to mess around with, and they felt like a reward for doing some of the side stuff that like gets you the points that you need for them. So big thumbs up on the customization. That was probably my greatest takeaway, that they nailed that. It is surprisingly RPG-like. Well, it's action RPG, but like there's a good amount of choice. So the morality. No, I'll start with the narrator. So every spoken word by the animals is all gibberish, right? So you walk up to a character and they'll just start like making animal noises at you, and then this narrator comes in and says, "Oh, this person knew you when you were a child." And he'll explain like what they're saying, and it's a cool concept and reminds me of something like Disco Elysium, which obviously only has the one narrator mostly, but the tone of this narrator, man, like it's just so off. He just sounds so bored, and then like so weirdly enthusiastic for some words.
It sounds like a sort of like a nature documentary, like narrator.
Yeah. It's just not. It's not the right decision to make for every line of dialogue. Like I think that suits a different game. I think it suits something like Disco Elysium, and even Disco Elysium knew not to just have the one voice. Like there are different voices there. This is just the same thing, and he makes comments in combat all the time. Like you'll do something, you're just like, oh, bash, bam, boom, and
oh jeez,
in the first 10 minutes
the part
of the game.
that
Yeah.
Didn't
within
that
the
come through
first
in one of
10
the
minutes.
trailers where they're just like action pose or something like
Is there
that?
like
Yeah.
a setting or a slider that like turns it, like that frequency down, or at least turns it
Thankfully.
off?
Quiet narrator versus
Yeah.
not
Okay.
loud narrator.
You can set it to 0, and you can set the gibberish to 0 as well, but the narrator will always talk for story stuff, and there's still a lot of story stuff. Like, there's still a lot of times where you run into stuff and you say, oh, this is a thing. So you can't get rid of them entirely.
Do you think it would have
but-
been a better choice if they like kind of just went to the Animal Crossing method of like they just say the gibberish and then you just read the dialogue box of what they're saying?
Yeah, I think so. I think...
Or the pre Breath of the Wild Zelda style, where you just
Yeah, that
read
would have
it
been
and
fine.
they just vocalize something generic over it.
Because the narrator just gets in the way, and it's an interesting concept. It really is. Like, I will give credit there, but it's not realized at all.
Mhm.
And it's at its worst in combat when, like I say, he's just shouting nonsense. But you can turn it off, and I
Please
did
just shut
for
up.
10 minutes. Yeah, it's just like, I don't need this. I don't need to be described what I'm doing. And yeah, so he's there all the time. He's arguably the most interesting thing about the story. It's just that the narrator's annoying, which is a shame. And then Brian and Adam, you're going to hate this because I know you both don't like this quality of a game, but the morality choices in this game, they're so flat. But if you play as a good guy, which I did, just I guess I'm boring. Every time you talk to a character, they'll be like, "You're like the nicest person ever. I can tell by the quality of your soul. Like, you're so good and light and amazing. You'll save us. You will save this world." And it happens every friggin' time you talk to someone. And it's like, I actually don't mind it that much. Usually I'm like, yeah, I am the hero, cool. But this time I was like, oh my god, I'm gonna have to go evil to shut some of these people up, like it's so annoying.
Are there like any
Yeah.
like long-term benefits, like say like Infamous, if whether you go totally good or totally bad? Is it like directly tied to some sort of like power tree or anything?
There's a few unique powers you can get from going all light or all dark. But to get there doesn't take a lot of time for the morality because you can just make good decisions all the time or bad decisions. It takes a lot of time to get there for the number of like skill points you'll need. So I didn't get them because it was just like it would have been like 5 more hours of my time that this game frankly
yeah.
just didn't earn.
It
Yeah,
actually kind of reminds me
um,
of like Knights of the Old Republic, where it's like if you're a good Jedi, you get like these awesome like healing and debuff spells. If you're a bad Jedi, you get lightning. If you want to play like anything more nuanced than that, you don't get any special powers.
Yeah,
Tough
yeah.
luck.
So there's another short-term benefit. I can't really talk to how it is if you play evil, but another big like section of the game is these tribes, and they all have like bases. They all have unique weapons you can earn, and one of the objectives is to take over all these bases and like win over the tribes or defeat them in combat or whatever. And it's another good idea on concept, on paper, but essentially if you make enough good decisions, you can get to like the second or third base, and the game will say, "Oh, you've been really good, and you've like chose not to kill anyone. So do you want to just end this war now? Do you want to bring all the tribes together?" And at the time, I remember writing it down in my notes on my phone. And I was like, "Wow, like this feels like a really cool like, I made this happen." But then I was like, a bit more cynical. Maybe a couple of hours later, I was like, "Actually, it kind of feels like Biomutant couldn't be asked for me to even play like this part of the game because it realizes it's just like filler content." It was just the same thing over and over again. So I feel like the game realized that if you're not doing these boss fights, just finish it early, I guess. And
Here's a
that's,
kitty corner you can cut.
yeah, exactly. And it was just like, oh, okay, I guess that's done. I could have chose not to, I guess. So like that criticism, I guess, is partly on me. But the option was there, and I was not willing to do these bloody base things over and over again. The game's repetitive enough. And with the morality, one thing I will say, so it's crap. Like, it's really bad. It's like the most bland of morality systems in the world. It's act like a dick or be nice to people. And some of the options are you can capture an animal. So you catch these animals. I still don't know why you catch them, but you do. And it's like, kill this animal or pet this animal. And I was like, what?
Holy shit!
I know.
You can only do 2 things with that with an animal, like in real life. You can either pet it or you kill it. Dang.
It's like Infamous is infamous for its like morality decisions sometimes. Like people are, oh, that was really cut and dry. But I'd argue otherwise. I think Infamous is fantastic. But it was better than, kill cuddly animal or keep cuddly animal.
Does it keep
Yeah,
that side kind of same spirit of like it's always two? It always has to be like between two extremes.
pretty much. Yeah, like
Huh.
there's like sometimes a bland option, like a middle ground. The game advertises that some of the tribes are like middle neutrality, so like slightly good or slightly bad. But when I met them, they were just all bad or all good. There was no like, it didn't feel like there was any difference. And then no matter what tribe you choose, it'll be the same thing over and over again of going to the other tribes, doing one or two where you just run in and kill some people, and then the last one will be like a boss encounter, and then you get a weapon, and that's it. Like it's just repetitive over and over and over again. Oh God,
Is the world interesting to explore at least? Like as you're going around?
kinda. It was at first, but it's like it's just like this big open
Like how big are
world.
we talking? Like relatively speaking, like
Yeah,
just a rough
yeah,
estimate.
pretty big. Like a
Like
I can't think of like a good comparison. Well, no, Breath of the Wild.
are
No.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we
no, I
can't
would
talk
say
about
Breath of the Wild. Yeah, I'd say Breath of the Wild.
okay,
But it doesn't feel
okay.
satisfying to move. Like
Hmm.
the game feels janky. And props to Adam because he had to edit my review and he probably heard the word janky like 5 million times. But it is just the perfect word for this game. It is. It feels like it's being held together by string. I promise there are some good factors about this game. I will get into them. Like at the moment, it's just me bashing it, but I have been holding this back for like a month now. Um, so yeah, I guess I'll skip to the combat. It's it's good and bad. I personally probably liked it more than most people will, but it doesn't feel very responsive at all. It's basically like it's just like press square to attack, press triangle to do like a special move, and then you have the option to use guns as well, and then you can counter and dodge, but neither of them really work that well. So it just feels like the game Stranglehold comes to mind, but like really bad. So you're just kind of like flipping around, shooting guns, and sometimes you'll hit them, and it's just meh. It's dumb fun. Like it'll get you through, but it's like it's okay.
So
Uh,
between Biomutant and Stranglehold, which one has like the better like gun kata feeling?
Oh, Stranglehold, definitely.
All right.
No thing about it because Stranglehold like did shoot
Stranglehold
them
kind of
really
rolls.
high. Yeah.
Oh,
Whereas
sick.
Biomutant, it's just like, in fact, Stranglehold's probably not the best thing because that's mostly gunplay. But you know what I mean by that. Like
Yeah,
you
yeah.
jump around a lot, and when such a big part of your game is combat, and the combat just doesn't feel great, it's it's just a shame. And I got through it. I enjoyed it enough, but it would like it's one of those things. It would never win an award for the combat. It's just passable.
Are there like any interesting encounters that you found that like at least you had to be creative with your approach instead of like your one tried and true? You know what I mean? Like yeah, it seems like this is the kind of game that it really encourages like like you were saying earlier like a lot of character customization and freedom. But does the game structure like hold up to support that in creative ways, or it just feels bland on that front?
It it does kind of let you do that. So, like I said, the different combat styles, when you choose your class, they let you focus in on something. You still play the same, but the different weapons do feel a bit different, and the guns all feel quite unique. I guess the biggest strength of it would be if you really mess with the game's crafting system, which is another big positive. Actually, the crafting system's really cool. Then you probably find it a bit more unique. So crafting works like you find individual parts for stuff, and then you craft one. You can craft like a weapon out of the individual parts, and that sounds like really generic. I realize, but they they really do let you make pretty much anything. Like there's quite a lot of options for it.
The crafting system, is it like I think there's like a rarity system in this game, like with the loot and everything. Like there's like commons, rares, legendaries, and whatnot. With the higher rarity stuff, does that like let you be more flexible in the crafting for them?
No, not really. It's more like damage numbers, stuff like that.
Okay.
I never really notice a difference. Sometimes it's like a different buff, like your weapon will be on fire. But it's it's not. The idea of crafting is cooler than it is in like actuality. And then annoyingly, the game has these like flashback scenes where you go to your childhood, and those are really cool. Those are actually really wholesome. like really get across why you might care about these characters. And in that prologue, you make a weapon for the first time. It teaches you the crafting system, and then later in the game, you pick up that weapon again. And it's supposed to be like, I guess it's supposed to be like a Master Sword moment, like, whoa, this wrench I made when I was a kid. It's so overpowered.
I kind of like
at
that. That's clever.
Yeah, like it's a cool little moment. Even I smiled a bit. I was like, oh yeah, there's that thing I made. But of course, thinking it was just a tutorial, like literally, I just made a wrench. I just made something really crap. So it's like, wow,
Nice.
mystical wrench. I was like, cool. But really
It's
overpowered.
all your
so
action,
yeah.
dude.
Yeah, I did think that when I said wrench. Oh god, I just remembered another thing. It literally just came into my head then when I said that.
Right.
And for the life of me, I can't remember it.
Oh, well.
I'll circle back to it. It will pop back into my head. There is a lot of valleys and peaks with Biomutant. But yeah,
Like
so
I still want to play this. Like just because it didn't like set the critical world on fire. Like I still kind of am just intrigued by it. Like I still want to make time for it.
Yeah,
You
I'll
know,
get a
if
few
I
patches.
just like immediately like cut out like, oh, it didn't score at least 80 or whatever, it's not worth my time. And like that's I don't want to think like that. Like I still want to make my own opinion.
oh yeah, like I am overbearingly negative right now, but I did like Biomutant. Like I still had some fun with it. It doesn't sound like it. It's just there are a lot of things that it tries and doesn't succeed in, or like half succeeds in. Like crafting is a half success in my eyes. Morality kind of sucks, but the way they present it, which is with these like little avatars of like a devil and an angel, and they're like, and they comment on your actions, and they'll be like, the light is winning, and the dark be like, oh, it's getting dark in here, like as if he's dying or whatever. That's cool. But there are loads of cool ideas, and there is heart there. Like I can tell there was a lot of effort and love put into this game.
There's a lot of Kingdom Hearts terminology you're throwing around. Light, darkness, heart. Okay.
It's just in my nature. I can't help it. But yeah, I don't know. It's just it didn't live up to it. The only time I would say, to answer your question, Josh, the only time there was like creativity in combat, in my like necessary creativity, was in the boss fights. And they're supposed to be these big set piece moments that let you mess around with some like the vehicles that you've unlocked. And I'll go back to that in a sec because that's another criticism. So it's a cool criticism, but they're supposed to be these big, awesome moments. But for me, they were just moments of anxiety because when I played Biomutant, I had 20 crashes on the PS5, which is like that is just ridiculous.
Yeah, it sounds like our view code came in very hot for the PS5 at least.
And that I think it is an issue with the PS5. I think it is just something to do with possibly even the way that backwards compatibility works with it.
It's okay, I can relate, man. I played East 9 on PS5 before release. I know how this goes.
It was just like it would happen all of the time. It was probably more than 20. I just stopped counting after that long. And the boss fights like 10-minute affairs. So when I was in them, I was like, okay, please don't crash. I don't want to do this again. And it happened every boss fight. I'd crash every boss fight. So even though you can be a bit creative with those, they ask you to like use your vehicle wisely for this thing, and like here's like a little gimmick for that section. I didn't get the most out of them because I was just worried the game would break on me. And that brings me back to, I think one of my biggest problems with Biomutant, if you can't tell, I have a lot of them, is that it's so surprisingly generic and formulaic. So when I looked at this game, when I looked at this weird kung fu creature game, I was like, oh wow, this seems like nothing I've ever played before. Or at least like it seems like it's just this weird thing. But it's so repetitive and it's so by the books. It reminds me of a Ubisoft open world. Like there's radar dishes you need to do to find suits. There's like biome specific hazards that you have to get like a suit for, like in Breath of the Wild. Like you have to get a specific costume to be able to survive there. There's just like endless bases, like Far Cry or Assassin's Creed or whatever. Like there's just all these elements that are just like chucked in there just to make it like feel bigger, I guess. And it just lets the game down. And the worst of it with the repetition is like for those 4 beasts, which already is like a little bit Breath of the Wild, I guess. You have to it goes the exact same way every time. So you go over to this character and they're like, "Oh, I'm a character from your past. I'm having trouble with this creature, but I'm trying to build this vehicle. Can you go find this part?" You find the part, you go back to them, and it's like, "Oh, thanks. Do you want to try it out?" You try out the thing, and it's like, "Okay, now get this other part for it to make it a bit better." And then it's like, "Okay, go fight the boss. Go fight the boss, return." And then they're like, "Oh, so this person on the other side of the map, they're having a similar problem. Go find them." You go over to them, repeat it all over again, just a slightly different vehicle and a different boss fight. And
you need.
baffled.
I feel like you need some extent of that because like you just need something to like engage the player with the combat and with the vehicle systems. But it's all about like implementation and variety in terms of like how quickly does it wear out its welcome.
Yeah, and that's the thing. If it was like mechanically sound, if it was like really fun to do, I'd be fine with it. I'm like, yeah, fine. This formula works. Like if I'm enjoying the game, like Breath of the Wild, for instance. Well, no, I am not comparing Biomutant to Breath of the Wild. I'm not doing that.
People are already upset about that. With water under the bridge at this point. Sorry.
Okay, so
Just-
I like we've seen this with some other games in the past, like say Elix, for example, like a very crazy, very ambitious game from the European studio and whatnot, and it it has like a certain charm to it that it found its audience that people kind of like warmed up to after accepting its flaws. It feels like the Biomutant is that kind of the same scenario where like we were mentioning earlier, it's a very relatively small studio for the scope of this size of this game, and I think they just kind of overreached, very ambitious, and I want to hear your opinion, George. I know this kind of armchair game developer, but if since you played it all the way through and you engaged with pretty much all the systems, what are the systems do you think they should have scaled back on or maybe cut in favor of like other areas? Where do you think it seems like this game has like a potential to shine, but where do you think it could have shined? Where do you think the developers could have like emphasized better on?
I think the biggest thing they needed to focus in on is the combat, because it's such an important part of the game. It's such like it's like the core pillar is that and exploration, and exploration is okay, but it's just very generic. So those two things, they've got the right like ideas, like combat and exploration are probably like the 2 key things for anything, but neither of them feel good. So what I would have preferred if they just scaled back the world, got rid of trimmed off all the fat. I don't need Ubisoft open world stuff in my Biomutant. Like just even just make it like purely story. Like make it just this smaller area, and then just go to town, making that combat system feel good.
Do you think this would have been like cooler, like as a level select system, like a stage select system instead of an open world?
If that's very dependent on if they made the combat good. Like it's all ifs and what ifs, isn't it? Like
right.
I wish it
Josh
was.
brought in the Elex comparison earlier, and that's Piranha Bytes open world RPG from like 2016, 17. And it's very similar because that game has a couple of very specific strengths, but its combat is not one of them. It's very tedious, and it's got this crappy stamina system and this weird jetpack that never feels good to use. But it has its strengths in that game specifically is in its factions. It's got 3 different world areas that are inhabited by specific groups of people. And I know this isn't an Elex discussion, but it had that one strength that kind of, if you gelled with that, it kind of carried the rest of the game. The combat's stiff. Yeah, the world's not that exciting, but it does this one thing really well. Is there that one thing that Biomutant does really well?
If pushed to choose the thing it does best, I would
sounding
say...
good.
No, yeah. Again, I did review. I gave it a 6, so I did think okay of it, but for some reason, all my thoughts have gone venomous today. It would be the customization and player choice for sure. They're pretty open. They're a lot of fun to mess around with. Even the gear you find, not a lot of it is repeating. There's some really cool little outfits you can make. So mine was obviously a pink and blue mask wearing bunny thing, and it just looked kind of cool. and the world has some interesting things to it. So it's supposed to be like the tale of what happens when pollution and all that sort of stuff like takes over our world, and then animals rise up and they're sort of like mutated because of it. Like there's interesting elements to it, but I feel like in my mind all I can remember now are like power plants and occasional like broken down buildings and cars, and I don't think it makes the most of it. That reminds me, actually, it popped into my head then of what I was trying to say earlier. That it has this weird language that it uses for like old world terminology, and it's like both charming and cringe at the same time. Like they'll call trains like, oh, this is where the choo-choos used to go, and stuff like that. I can't think of any more examples, but the game is full of them. Like it's just full of like.
Is it like that? So it's English words, but they like pick another word to describe a thing.
Yeah. So it's like a knife will be turned into a stabby, that sort of.
You know what that
Yeah.
reminds me of? That reminds me of like this is going to be the weirdest thing that I never expected to talk about on a podcast, but it reminds me of do you remember the Land Before Time movies? Where
Yes.
instead of
Oh, wow.
T-Rexes, they're sharp tooths, or instead
Yeah.
of
Oh my
Yeah.
god.
instead of Triceratops, they're Trihorns or whatever.
I was thinking like Little Mermaid, like descriptions of human stuff in the
oh,
mermaid
like
world.
Thingamajigs.
Thingamabobs.
Yeah. Like, well, that's it. Like, again, that's a proven thing, you know. But I saw that someone put on Twitter, and it's like the narrator doesn't help the fact because but they're describing like a toilet, and they're like, this is where the brown went like flush is, and I was like, you know, it's I can hear it in his voice as well, and it just makes me cringe.
Animal shit. That should have been in there.
So I think
I see what you mean by like both charming and cringe.
yeah, like
Okay.
it's unique for sure, and it's entertaining to see sort of things like how they describe. Oh, I know what a train is, so haha, they call it a choo-choo now. You know, you get that little like reaction in the back of your head, but after 30 hours of boring combat and repetitive objectives, you're just like, okay, I don't care anymore. And I think that's a pretty good summary of Biomutant. I think it just wore me down. It just wore me down so much. And I think Biomutant is chucking shit at a wall and seeing what sticks, and some of it is really good. Some of it is cool. Some of it's unique, and the aesthetic, the graphics are, you know, they're pretty good. Like the environments look really cool. The creatures look really weird, but you know, it's unique. But then so many of the other elements of the game are just shit. They're just shit stuck to a wall, and that's such a shame. I hate saying it. I really, really wanted to come on here and say Biomutant's really good, or like Biomutant's like my favorite game so far in the year. But unfortunately, it's shit stuck to a wall.
Yeah, but it's interesting because this is like going to be a big learning experience as a first game for that studio. So like they really went all the way big scale, but now they kind of have a good gauge of like what's reasonable and what's not for their next project. So it's gonna be really interesting to see what lessons are learned from Biomutant going into whatever they have next. Supposedly, hopefully, you know, hopefully this game's like enough to keep on, because you know there are definitely some creative talent in that studio. There's definitely ideas, like you said there, and I think if they take the right lessons away from this, we could see something like, you know, much better, much cooler next time around from that studio.
Yeah, and I would hate for this to be the end of them, because like I say, there if you go, of course if you go online there's different opinions, but some people are really digging it. Most critic reception I've seen has been like fairly in line with mine, if not worse. But you know, I would encourage people to go check it out. It is definitely trying stuff, at least, and you know, you might really like it. There are people out there who don't like Psychonauts. I bloody love Psychonauts, one of my favorite games of all time. But it's, you know, cult classic, I think, rings true, and I think Biomutant can find an audience, and I hope it does. But weirdly, it's not me. This time.
And then George did write up a written review for Biomutant up on the site. So if you want to hear what he's just said now in a written, more formal way, you can go up to rpgsite.net. And I think it's the top cover at the moment, or it's one of the three. So give that a read through if you want to see his final thoughts on Biomutant. All right, before we move on to discussing some of the next games we've been playing, welcome back to the podcast late, Chow Min Woo.
How's it going, guys?
Good morning,
Hey,
dude.
Chow.
How are you?
Tired.
we're
We all
tired,
stayed
yeah.
up late. Yeah.
Yeah, so obviously, so Chow wasn't here at the start, but we're happy to welcome him on now. Chow, what have you been playing the last 7 days? Now, since you arrived late, I'm going to put you on the spot. Like, what do you want to talk about?
I've been playing Final Fantasy 14.
Oh,
Only resubbed because I was watching some story scenes, and I'm like, this has got me pretty emotional, even though I don't know much about these characters. So I'm like, well, I used to have an account, and I have a lot of stuff in it, so I'll just resub and just start a new character from there instead of doing the free trial way.
are you going to be able to get all the way to? So you're at like early Realm Reborn stuff.
Yeah, I'm still pretty early. I just got the airship pass, so that's basically where I am at the game. But I'm
Why
sure
did you put money into it if you're still in that zone where it's like a free trial, right?
I believe I can get to level 80 with the pre-order earrings.
Oh, they have like the pre-order bonus that gives you more
Like a boost
experience?
item.
Yeah,
Okay.
they give it apparently in every expansion. So in every expansion, they give you an earring that lets you speed level to a certain level, right? And if I really fail at the game, I guess I'll just buy a story skip and level skip or something, whatever that thing is called.
So
you're just,
how
so,
what?
so here's your setup now. You got one screen FF14, the other is a Bravely Default 2 guide, and you're working on them simultaneously.
Yeah, well, gotta make time for one of them, I guess, right?
Yeah, so Chow is our one of our guide writers up on the site, and still plugging away at Bravely Default 2 because it's a surprisingly big game when you have to boil it all down. And he's done some great like artwork with the maps for that game because it doesn't have any in-game maps. So
Yeah.
how likely do you think it is that you're going to stick with 14? Because obviously the new expansion Endwalker is coming out this November. You are several hundred, at least a couple hundred hours away from that, or maybe if you like mainline it a little less than that. But are you in it for the long haul, or do you not know yet?
I think I will probably I have to get through Shadowbringers. I don't think I could give you like a fair assessment if I don't drive into the meat content of the game, right? Because all the good
It's
stuff
not.
I've
It's
seen is all from the latest expansions, right? But not
yeah.
from a Realm Reborn. Because I played Realm Reborn when it first launched. And I'm like, yeah, I think I'll just go back playing my my other MMO. But I think at the time it's more like a gear thing because in the other MMO I used to play, I was overpowered, overgeared, and I kind of missed that playing a new game, right?
I do kind of get that where it's like I'm already at endgame in this other place that I've invested in, and I don't want to start back at ground zero. But it does sound like, as someone who doesn't play Final Fantasy 14, that like Stormblood is really where it kind of like is like the inflection point. It seems like it's where it's really started taking off. At least that's my interpretation from the outside.
A lot of people tells me it's Heaven's Ward when it picks up. There's like a really good cliffhanger at the end of Realms Reborn, and everything just go down from there or something like that.
I
That's
think it
what
was
I'm
1.0 where it really took off, man. Hell yeah.
Oh, we can always talk about OG, but I don't think anyone here plays OG.
Yep, unfortunately.
So
One
while
can
we're
do it.
talking about 14, James, you also put some time into it this week because of the last 5.55. It's like the last bridging content edition right ahead of Endwalker.
Yeah, there should be like a few minor patches here and there before Endwalker comes out. The most major one would be 5.58 whenever that hits, which will allow for data center travel, which is a pretty big deal actually. Because as it currently stands, if you want to play with somebody else on 14, you have to be on the same data center, or you have to make an alt character for the same data center that they're on. That's actually one of the main reasons I haven't played too much with Colin because my main character is on the Primal data center, but he's playing on the Crystal data center.
Now,
But,
can you already transfer data centers with a fee, or is it literally not possible?
It's with a
You-
fee. It's
It's with a
$18.
fee. Yeah. So data center travel allows you to like temporarily transfer over to a different data center. It's probably going to take a while, so it's something you're going to have to plan for because I don't think it's going to be as seamless as the server transfer thing, which is already in the game, where you can visit a different server, a different world on the same data center, and usually that's basically instant because, like, well, it's on the same data center, so it's just like it's
Yeah.
it's an IO operation. It's not actually something that's going to require like a lot of. It's going to be interesting to see how it works out. It's going to be interesting to see how long it takes, and it's going to be interesting to see the limitations, because there will be limitations, and I'm sure, and they haven't exactly said what those limitations will be yet.
I wonder if they're gonna present it like a Domino's pizza tracker. It's like, all right, your character's like in the first stage of this. We're baking it right now. It's gonna come. It's gonna be done like in 2 days.
I don't think it'll be that long, but I haven't really played any online game where it has them so like divided like that in the first place. So even just wrapping my head around having like different data centers is kind of different. Well, I guess I have seen it where there's like North American centers and European centers, and that's kind of how they're kind of like regionally subdivided here too, right? In general.
Yeah, so there's 3 North American data centers. I believe there's 2 European data centers and 2 Japanese data centers. Again, I don't play on those data centers, so I don't know. But there's multiple data centers for Europe and Japan, I think, and they're going to be adding in an Oceania data center. So, and
So,
of
Chad,
course, they
what?
only really need one for Oceania.
So, Chad, what class are you playing? What
What
class did you pick?
class I'm playing? Well, I picked the wrong city to start out with, and I picked the what was it? I picked the gladiator. I thought it was a DPS class because in my old MMO, a gladiator was a DPS class that uses heavy armor, but in this game, apparently it leads to a paladin eventually. I think that's what it was, and I'm like, no, I don't want to play a tank. So I ended up like re-leveling to a pugless, which is supposed to go into a monk class. So.
Cool. Well, we'll have to see if we can just follow you through your adventures in 14. Maybe not quite as frequently as we did back when James was doing it, but it'll be interesting to see how your thoughts evolve as you go through it.
Well, I am a Final Fantasy fan at heart, so I got to give it a fair shake eventually, right? I mean, I played all the
I
games.
guess you're opposite from James in that regard because he went through having none of the background context, and you went through having pretty much all of it.
Wait a minute, where's the fair shake here? Where's our FF11 account, Chow?
Where's my FF11 account? I don't know. It looks a little dated to me to play that one.
I thought you were gonna give it a fair shake. You're a Final Fantasy fan. I'm getting mixed messages here.
Oh my god!
So how many hundreds of hours did you spend making Trails guides on GameFAQs? And those games look even more dated than 11.
Dang.
No way. Oh no, man! I was watching your stream playing, and I'm like, nope. It's like I have to go travel without a map. I mean, you saw me playing that 2 minutes. I was completely lost. I have the map open 24/7.
They have a walkthrough. They have a level 1 to 119 or something guide, step by step.
Step by step. Oh my god.
So what they're referring to, if you listen to last week's podcast, James and I talked for about an hour about our foray into Final Fantasy XI, mostly as like a curiosity, but out of the first week, there's genuine enjoyment out of there as well. We're not going to talk about it for an hour today because we've kind of
Hopefully.
obviously, yeah. Well, it's kind of one of those things where it's like we've already introduced how the game feels to play, how it's like organized. A lot of those generalities that take a long time to kind of like spin up and really discuss. All we can talk about now is like our iterative each week.
Yeah, give me a status update. Where are you guys at now?
So when Final Fantasy XI first released in Europe and North America, it released with the first expansion, Rise of the Xylarts, kind of bundled in. So what we did last week is we beat the base game original story as it released in Japan, which is honestly pretty thin. Doesn't have a lot of time to really like ramp up its ideas or thoughts, and it seems kind of basic. But then now we're a few hours, maybe more like a dozen plus hours into Rise of the Xylarts, which is the first expansion, and
we're over 20 hours into it.
Oh, really? Time flies, I guess. But you can kind of see, like, even then, you can kind of see, like, there's a lot more cutscenes, a lot more animation, a lot more named characters. I'm really starting to get a feel for Aldo of the Ten Shoto from Juno, and then the different antagonists that you get, and Zaid, the Gulka, who was like kind of like a rogue that kind of turned his back on his hometown. Like you really start to get a feel for like what the cast of characters is, where before it was so fleeting in the original game that you never really knew who was a character that would stick around or who was only present in the moment because they're an inhabitant of that city or whatever. And I want to be careful, just because I say like we finished base game and we entered first expansion, the game isn't really designed like that. If we wanted to, James and I could have jumped into the fourth expansion, which is Ot Urgen, which is in the desert, I believe. Like it's not designed in like a linear fashion, but we're kind of playing it through that way because obviously there was a little bit of that intent there, like inherently, because that's the order they released and things like that.
One thing I will say is that we played through, I'd say a little less, or around the first third of Chains of Promathia or something like that. And the reason I decided to go back and just do Rise of Xylart first is because obviously Chains of Promathia was the expansion that came out after it, but as far as content in the game goes, like a lot of it's like fairly set, like a lot of it's fairly standalone. Like Treasures of Otargon is standalone from what I can tell. Seekers of Adeline is fairly standalone, but Chains of Promathia and Rise of the Xylart are basically direct continuations on the main game storyline up through Nation Mission 5-2. And it's even at the point where both Chains of Promathia and Rise of the Xylart actually share a set of epilogue quests. So I kind of wanted to do Rise of the Xylart first, just because it's like, well, if they're obviously connected to two storylines, I'd rather do the one that released first. And even if it's not necessarily required, it feels like it makes more sense to do it that way.
Yeah, it's kind of like imagine I don't know, imagine like a river delta where at the opening of the delta you've got the base game, the Nation mission, so it's already fleshed out in like 3 branches. Then you got Rise of the Xylart attached to it, and then Promathia attached to it. And then it seems like it funnels its way in towards a slightly more linear progression once you get to Ot Urgen and the later expansions. Though with some caveats like the Rhapsodies of Vana'diel stuff that they added in 2015 kind of goes back to being very nonlinear. It doesn't just tail on to the end of that. So I know I'm just rattling off a whole bunch of proper nouns here, but that's kind of how the game is designed. It's not like this tidy thing where you're like, now you're in expansion 1 chapter and now you're in the expansion 2 chapter, or even like the expansion 2 areas. Like the areas are multi-purposed where a tunnel leading from one place to another might be used in the base game, and then you revisit a different part of it for a later expansion thing that was added. And we kind of talked about that previously when we talked about the like level caps have been like altered over the years, and you run into something where it's like, I'm supposed to be here and I'm level 20, but there's level 50 enemies around or whatever. I actually kind of like it because it feels a bit more organic. It doesn't feel more like, oh, I'm not in Stormblood, so I can't go to the Stormblood, labeled spots. It seems just like this is the world that these quests and these storylines inhabit, and certain expansions are going to have you ask the player to revisit these places and under different contexts or under different objectives. But even going into Rise of the Xylart, which again is the very first expansion, there's a lot more cutscene. There's a lot more characters that are named, and I'm actually like kind of learning a lot about how their histories, and where it seemed like the base game didn't really touch on that at all. Very, very little, with only a very few characters. So you can already kind of see like, I wonder where it's going to go to by the time I get to the very end, like the stuff that they're adding as of last year, the Voracious Resurgence. Like will that feel like relatively modern? I'm actually thinking so, just kind of looking at the trajectory.
Yeah, I'll just say this right here. The cutscenes, at least for the small bits of more modern like FF11 cutscenes in the game, like Rhapsodies of Vana'diel, and I'm sure that both I and Brian are thinking of the same one here. They're really good, and they're better than most of the cutscenes in modern Final Fantasy 14. Which is
I think
wild
we're talking ahead of the Siren introduction.
Yeah.
So a character kind of gets like engulfed in a magic vortex, and their body is like contorting, and it's like animated pretty well. But then they get freed, and then this character kind of gets on one knee and like readies her bow and fires like a magical arrow. And it's like it's actually like obviously it's built on an older engine, so there are limitations. But this is coming from the base game where characters kind of like stand in a circle and do their base game emotes that the players can do, and like so they just string like player emotes together to like tell the stories. But now they have like custom animations and like actual model rigging, so you can kind of see the jump in quality pretty immediately.
Yeah. I'm hoping that Endwalker can be more like that. There's a specific cutscene or a couple of cutscenes in 5.3's storyline that were really, really good, and they even outright like everyone noticed. It's like, oh man, this is like a huge step up from what the cutscenes are usually like. Hopefully, that's a sign for things to come because it's actually kind of embarrassing if 11 has better cutscenes than 14 does.
It's weird. I've never played 14, but I'm like, how is that possible?
It's
Well,
just,
a lot
it's
of
so funny
characters-
hearing. It's so funny hearing. I wish the next Final Fantasy 14 expansion was more like FF11.
Now, FF11, I do want to say, like, we've been talking about it pretty glowingly, but you do kind of have the right mindset. Like, the combat is still very slow and somewhat tedious. And if that's something you really care about, then I don't think you will be able to really enjoy this game to the fullest extent. There's so you kind of have to, like, frame yourself like this game was designed 2 decades ago. And there's only so much that they can do to bring it up to modern standards, which is why I thought the original projection for a mobile game remake was kind of interesting, because maybe those are the sorts of things they could have ironed out or kind of brought up. But at the same time, there is like a degree of quaintness to it that I am enjoying. That it's like, oh, this is what they were able to accomplish before with the limitations in place. So
Yeah,
you kind
one
of have
thing
to have that in mind.
I definitely say that FF11 is not a game that I would recommend sight unseen to people, because I'd have to know more about what types of games they play, what type of gamer they are, and like what they can handle, and what they actually look for in an MMO, because 14 is more palpable, and obviously there's the free trial, which means that you can play for like the first half of the current content without worrying about like spending money, putting a sub in. You can't do that with 11. I'm still enjoying it quite a bit, but it's clear that there's a lot of rough patches, and I hope that eventually they can, like, down the line or whatever, something can happen to really deal with some of them, like the server delay. It's like that, honestly, it's just the server delay is one of the big things to me, because every time you phase into a different zone, it's like a good, like, at least 5 to 10 seconds before you can really do anything in your inventory, and it's like you're waiting for things to load in, and sometimes it'll take way more than 5 to 10 seconds for stuff to load in. Maybe it'll, like in a city, it'll take like 30 seconds before you even see the home point or something.
And then
It's-
one very clear indication of the server delay is when we're streaming in Discord side by side and our characters are like next to each other. Like when you compare like my viewpoint versus someone else's viewpoint, James's, we're like our character models are in two completely different positions. And I think that always happens to some extent with online games, where you kind of have to like meter the client connection. I don't know the technical terms, but I've seen it before in other online games. But it's really bad in Final Fantasy 11, where on his screen he'll be 8 body lengths ahead of me, and on my screen our characters will be side by side. Which, when you're running from place to place, it doesn't matter. But in combat, where there are some skills that have like positioning related elements, like backstabbing or whatever, it just seems like, man, this is kind of sloppy, and it really could use like a modern interpretation of this, where they didn't have to place so much constraints on how the network services worked. You just wonder, like, man, how did they accomplish this back in 2000 or 2001? So that's one of the
Yeah.
things that I've noticed when we share our screens.
Yeah, it's been very interesting though. Like, just and I've been talking about this internally with like on like the staff chat and whatnot before, but it's really fascinating how successful 11 still is, because I found this like kind of calculator that the community's come up with to kind of determine the minimum possible like revenue that's coming in from Final Fantasy 11 subs, based off of server populations that people take at regular instances. And it seems like the absolute floor is that like even now, like Square is making over $2 million a year off of this game,
Oof.
which is kind of
Weird
crazy.
thing is though is that they could have easily. Well, I don't want to say easily, but I'm surprised that the game isn't just like in auto mode. Like we saw what Sega is going to do with Phantasy Star Online 2, where they're basically just putting it on auto mode, where it'll have its seasonal festivals that'll just rotate through on a calendar basis, no more planned updates. And they can still like have a revenue stream from that because it'll still run through like its scratch tickets or whatever. They could have done the same with 11. They could have said like, all right, we're just going to rotate through like monthly login events that will rotate through these different categories from here until we decide to kill the servers. But no, they're like, we'll do some of that, but also we're going to add stuff in 2015 and then add more stuff in 2019. Like, so it's making money for them, but they're still also investing into it to try to like keep bumping it up. So that
And
I
it's
think
funny.
is something that's admirable.
And it's funny because right as we're saying this, like just a few minutes ago, the Final Fantasy XI Twitter account detailed the June version update that comes with new story additions to the Voracious Resurgence.
Man, like, will we be ready in time? We've got 2 days to get to.
So you guys are in the long haul as well.
Yep.
Yeah, I might like. I obviously I don't want to just spend the next 8 podcasts just talking about Final Fantasy 11. So I will try to maybe throw in some Biomutant or throw in the new Final Fantasy 7 Integrate stuff coming out in early June. But yeah, I do plan on. I at least want to see this through like to the main ending, to like the Xylar and Promathia epilogue, and then at that point I don't see why I would stop at that point even. So. I'm having a good time. I hope people listening to this are like, I can't believe they're talking about this, but it's, I don't know, it's enjoyable if you have the right mindset. I think people should try it out.
I'm actually playing the hottest, latest games, unironically this time.
Oh, okay, yeah.
What
So
could this be?
James and I are not playing anything modern because we are bad for supporting the podcast. What are you up to, Josh?
I guess George and I can talk about this. This Knockout City game came out.
Yes.
I guess a week ago or whatnot. This is the new EA published competitive game that's basically competitive dodgeball. Its main mode's like a 3 versus 3 type of deal. It's a pretty interesting game. I was pretty surprised by it. It still has obviously the rules of dodgeball where there are balls you can pick up and throw scattered throughout these like rooftop maps, and it like you don't need like precise aim. You don't need, it's not like a keyboard and mouse intensive game, because when you pick up these balls, you throw it at others via like a lock-on system. So like you charge it up, and then at full charge you lock onto someone, and it'll like throw it towards them. And each player has like 2 pips of health, like 2 hearts. And obviously, after getting hit by one of these, they'll lose a heart. And if they get knocked out, then it's like a point for the other team, and it's like a first to like 10 type of deal and whatnot. And the interesting thing about this game is there are you can actually become the ball for your teammates to throw. So like you become like a Samus morph ball, and your teammates or even enemies can pick you up to throw at others. And that has like certain rules behind that, because like if they pick you up and they charge you up, instead of like the lock on, you like become like a bomb that they throw up high into the air, and then you manually position where you want to like fall as you're going down, kind of like
Hate them. Oof.
kind of like Section 8. If anyone, no one's played that. Damn it! But
I've
it's
heard of
kind
it.
of like that. Section 8 is such a good game, but it's kind of like that. And when you become like the bomb and you fall into someone, that'd be like an instant kill. George, like I'm only explaining the basic of basics, and there's more to talk about, but it's kind of the general setup. How have you been finding it, George?
So I'm rank 60 now.
Dang! Holy shit! Yeah,
No.
I didn't know. I didn't have a Knockout City Pro on the podcast.
I don't play many multiplayer games. Like, I won't put the time into it, just because I think the way we are, most of us is if we're reviewing a game, we do that and then it's on to the next one. Like Josh had you had like a first half of the year of reviews, so you were moving from one game to the other. So I don't really find the time for multiplayer stuff. But I'm addicted to this game. I've put like 20 hours into it. I bloody love it. It is my favorite multiplayer game since Splatoon.
Wow.
Yeah, that's high
something.
praise as well.
Yeah, it's pretty alluring. It's also, well, at the time of this podcast, it's going to run out, but there was this like 10-day free trial, so like anyone could have jumped in for free, and then like the full game's like $10 or $20,
Yeah, 20.
and so I might just pick up the full thing because I'm pretty impressed, even though I haven't gotten much time into it.
Well, this is I think the main strength of it is, it's so when you learn the mechanics and you're messing with other players, like as soon as you learn how to do a fake throw, like if you click the right thumbstick in, you pretend to throw, so you're like, psych.
I didn't know that. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's
That's the winning tactic. So basically, go up to people, do a few spins, do a few like front flips, side flips. Like, oh, where am I gonna go? Where am I gonna go? Fake throw, and they're like, I'll catch it, and then they'll go to catch it, chuck it.
Yeah,
straight
something I didn't detail earlier is that when someone throws a ball at you, you can actually catch it instead, so you don't get hit. So there'll be like this window where like you kind of go to the stance, and then you have like this like circle that flashes for a second, and then within that like second, if the ball like it was about to hit you, you'll catch it instead.
Just like real dodgeball.
Yeah, exactly. You just go into a stance for a second in real life. But go for it.
I was going to say that that's one of the major strengths of it is that it is really skill based. There is no there are a few balls that are a bit tricky. Like you've got like a ball that will cage people, but generally it comes down to who presses stuff faster, who tricks the other player. Like there's no, this gun's overpowered. This map is a bit like those are just noises. You know what I mean? It is. You chuck the ball, you catch the ball, it gets faster. You trick the other opponent, you're still catching it. It's so exhilarating when you finally when you're like 1-to-1 with this person and you're chucking dodgeballs at them and you're just it's speeding up. You're like, who's gonna fail this? And then they fail. It's like it's adrenaline.
Yeah,
it's
definitely, it really tests your reactions, especially when you guys are like up close next to an enemy and it becomes like that weird awkward moment of like, are you gonna like fake throw it? Are you gonna throw it really slow? Are you just gonna try to flick it back the second that I throw it? It's like it's very mind games heavy of like very intimate, because it is definitely that type of game that like you feel outskilled or you outskilled someone else, and it feels really good when you're the one doing it. It's like, I'm kind of a bit nasty at this game. I'm the best.
But it is that though, isn't it? It's like, it's so mechanically sound. That's the thing. Like fundamentally, I think the presentation's a bit it's a bit annoying. I think the music's a bit, like it's very EA big. If anyone remembers that, it's very It's very for street. It's like. It's sort of cringe, but it's all right. It's not Biomutant levels of cringe. Sorry, Biomutant. But fundamentally, the mechanics are so good. It's so satisfying to play. That will carry it. And if it was free to play, I think it could be the next big thing. I think the paywall will stop some people. Personally, I think that will stop it becoming the next massive thing. But I went for the deluxe edition. I love this game. I would recommend everyone to get it. I just don't know if many people will shell out 20 quid for a multiplayer only experience that could be free to play.
Yeah, that's I'm interested to see what the stat drop off is once the free trial is over, by tomorrow, I think, as a time.
Well, it is on Game Pass. Like I see it right now on my. Game Pass
that's true. Yeah.
So I'm not. It doesn't seem like my type of game, but I don't have any other excuse. I can't use the cost excuse.
There's also like a really cool thing with each match where there are different types of balls that you can pick up. So one is like a multi-ball where after you throw one, you still have another ball in your hand, and it's like up to 3, so you can just like chuck 3 balls at them. There's also like a moon ball where if you're holding it, your gravity is really low, and if you like chuck it at someone, they kind of like fly off really far.
I
like it.
And there's also a dash mechanic in this game, so you can just like kind of shove yourself into someone, and then you'll like kind of stagger them into the air for a second, so you can actually like set up like really sick like team attacks where someone is trying to like get someone. So in order for them to not catch the ball, the enemy to not catch the ball, one of your teammates will like shove them, and during that brief period where they're staggered, you throw it at them, and so it's a guaranteed kill, right, or a hit right there.
Yeah,
and there's a lot of like teamwork going on, especially if like you're kind of working with people that you know. You can really set up a lot of interesting like guaranteed hits. You're like, oh, okay, I'll ambush them here or I'll get them there. And I think the one thing that I need to like wrap my head around is the actual stage layout of the maps, because sometimes like the way the maps are designed, like you won't necessarily know if like you're going into like a pitfall or not, and every time you fall to your death, it's counted against you, so the other
Yeah,
team gets a
yeah.
point. So
You do get used to it.
yeah,
And I think it's fascinating to have like played a multiplayer game like this from the start, because I've played it every day, like for like 4 or 5 hours every day, like for at least like the last week, I think. Um, and seeing how the meta has evolved as it's gone on, and people have like, maybe it's just because I've been paired with people at like similar levels, but those like unique balls at first they kind of feel a bit like, oh, they're kind of annoying, they get in the way, but like they all change up the game's mechanics so interestingly. Like the cage ball, which cages you up, like at first I just saw people using that as like, okay, then this person's a ball and you'll chuck them, but then slowly you start seeing people figure out, actually I can just chuck this person off a cliff because they can't get out of these cage balls. So that became like a new thing.
oh,
That
that's
becomes a
interesting.
new,
Yeah,
like, yeah, like it's so like, because that's now that I see that in every match now. No one uses it as ammo. They just run to the nearest edge and chuck it, and
uh,
that's so fascinating to me.
actually, I have, yeah, someone has killed me like that. I thought they just missed the throw, but maybe they just chucked me off the map. Yeah, that lines up. That
But
lines up.
I can't wait to see where it goes. I hope it has like a long future ahead of it. I hope, like, already I haven't been this nerdy about a multiplayer game in a long time, but I was starting to think like, oh, they could do like a bowling ball that's like really heavy, but maybe it knocks you out in one hit. Like, I started thinking of how this game could keep going on. So yeah, it is. I remember James earlier in the year was like, oh, It Takes Two is like already one of my game of the year things. I think Knockout City's probably my game of the year so far.
Wow. Yeah, I
I
need to
know.
put a lot
Yeah.
more time to this.
Oh wait, no, Disco Elysium. Okay, yeah, Knockout City. Knockout City's second.
Like I'm with you. I'm really interested where it goes. I'll probably go pick it up. I'm pretty impressed off the bat. I'm really glad that they allowed people to try it for free, for a week, and obviously Game Pass people have it up there much longer. It's I didn't think much of it, when they first unveiled it, but they've really it's hard to really like sing praise about it until like people actually get their hands on it, because we can say anything that we want, but I think it really the dots only connect when people actually give it a go for themselves and see how it goes. I think
Yeah,
the
with multiplayer games, it's so hard to see like how much staying power does it have. Like it's so hard to predict.
yeah, I think the really cool thing that like my nerdy thing about it was when someone has you locked on in the game with a ball and they're about to throw it, it fills the screen with like a border, like a colored border to let you know, hey, you're being locked on, and then it'll like give like a little radio fuzz off the border of the screen of like the general direction of where they are, so you have a good indication of like, okay, they're from there. And it kind of reminds me of like my Gundam Extreme Versus game, where they actually like fill the screen with like a border of the screen of like, hey, someone's locked onto you or looking at you, and then they fire at you and then it'll like flash red. There's a similar thing in this game where like someone's about to throw it, they throw it, and then it'll like actually indicate on the border of the screen, similar to Gundam of what's happening. So I was like, oh, okay, that's an interesting. Like, there's no way they like use Gundam as like as an example for this, but it's interesting to see like a common DNA between them. So both competitive games I play.
Well, that's kind of just like a smart UX thing, where it's just like,
Yeah.
is that UX? Where it's just like, obviously, you can't just rely entirely on the player site, or we decided that we don't want to do that. What is another way we can kind of give them the spatial information using the heads up display that they have? Oh, let's try this. So I think that's kind of neat. That's clever.
I also got peer pressured by some friends to go pick up Earth Defense Force World Brothers. That's a really cool, neat game. It's kind of like a celebration of the entire series of all the EDFs. Instead of going with the realistic graphics, all voxel based. So it has a very similar look to the 3D Dot Game Heroes of the PS3. It's a very cute little game. There were stories about like, oh, this cube Earth has blown up and it's like shattered to pieces. So you're going to like different parts of the world, like from London to Japan to whatnot, to reassemble the world together again, piece by piece. I think the weird part of this game that's like it won't translate well for like more modern audiences who are very sensitive to like how how certain like people around the world are portrayed, because it's very it kind of relies on stereotypes. Like the you have this ninja character that you get where like he talks about, oh, this mission we're trying to find ingredients for miso soup. Why? Because I really want miso soup. Or we go to Maidland in Akihabara, and then obviously the character that you get is like this maid character, and then like when you're visiting China, you recruit this character who's a dim sum sister, and she has like this like flash kick or kick move and whatnot. And like their designs are it's very stereotypical, but it's like a lighthearted fun. They're not really trying to um like like make a statement or anything. It's kind of like in the spirit of the series, for better or worse. But like with the celebration of the series, like you, instead of choosing a class and going with that class, you actually have like a squad of 4 that you maneuver around, and you recruit people to your side throughout the mission. So there's like usually three like fallen people throughout the mission that you rescue, and then you and then after that you kill like a whole bunch of bugs. It's a lot of good fun, especially in co-op with friends. If people who play EDF know what to expect for the most part. It's a pretty solid entry to the series that I'm pretty excited to play more of. Um, I've also, I guess, for the other thing, we'll wait till the Monster Hunter update news, and then
I just want to
other.
say for the Earth Defense Force thing, like, I don't know if I'm just like completely the wrong audience for it, but when you put this on the podcast list saying that you were going to talk about Earth Defense Force World Brothers, I had no idea this game existed or came out. Like, I had
Oh, yeah.
zero exposure to this at all. So I don't
Mhm.
know if that says like the marketing was thin, or if it just I
It's
do
a
not
very
play
niche
any common
series.
DNA. Yeah.
It's a very, very, very niche series for like people who know will like latch onto it. But that's standard affair for EDF. Like not a lot of
All right.
people know. But obviously in the since you have a lot to get to, I can't really go too deep into it. Scarlet Nexus demo came out for PS5, Sony platforms, PS5, PS4. I tried it out last night, both Yuito and Kasane. Um, I'm pretty impressed with how the game plays. The game supports the haptic triggers and haptic feedback on PS5, so it feels really good to actually like throw things with your psychic powers in that game. Like when you press R2 to throw something, it'll actually have like a resistance, not like a click resistance, but like the pressure resistance. So it'll like kind of give you some tactile feedback as you're throwing something, and that feels really good. I'm pretty impressed with like the cadence of combat, especially with Yuito. How you kind of throw something at something, and then you go in with your sword strikes, put them in the air, throw something, and then slam them back down, throw another thing. It's really, I'm really looking forward to the full release now after this demo. I was I think that the thing that caught me off guard was the skill tree interface. I don't know if you remember that, George, in your preview of the game.
I do.
Where
Yeah.
it's like kind of like a weird. It's not quite Path of Exile crazy, but it is kind of. It feels scattered in a way that like I don't know if it
Yeah,
makes sense yet. So,
Like
but
there's bits missing.
yeah, so I'll probably like speak more about it when the full game comes out. But I really highly recommend people to give that game demo a shot, whether it's on the Xbox or Sony systems. And but obviously, once again, in the since we were kind of constrained on time for news, I can't really speak much more about what I've been playing.
And that comes out at the end of June, the full release for
Yeah.
Scarlet Nexus.
Yeah.
All right. So with that out of the way, and with everyone having their chance to speak, let's go into kind of what we had kind of hyped up at the beginning of all this, and and kind of a re brought up as we closed out the first section. Obviously, before we go there, the Biomutant review we did bring up. Go ahead and give that a read. The other major feature that went up this week is Alex Donaldson put up a quick, I think it's like a 10-minute video for footage of Final Fantasy VII Intergrade. Just some high quality footage, some 4K stuff sent over from Square Enix, just showing the battle system, showing the Yuffie gameplay. So if you're excited about that, it's only a few weeks away. Go ahead and give that a look through. That's on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/rpgsitenet. Now onto the big stuff, onto the big guns. obviously, as of this week, we had a whole bunch of kind of themed streamed events, which is going to be, I think, the sort of cadence going forward for at least the next month or month and a half. I kind of rattled through them at the beginning: Sonic, Monster Hunter, Dragon Quest, and even Metal Max. But let's start with obviously the biggest one for our site, and that is
Sonic.
Dragon Quest.
Sorry.
I wish. No, Sonic the Dark Brotherhood 2 was not announced. So, darn. We don't have much to talk about there. But yeah, Dragon Quest. So, a couple days ago, we had the Dragon Quest 35th anniversary stream event. We kind of brought it up in passing in a previous podcast. And the reason why it was kind of extra exciting, even going into it, is that it was like the first time for this series particularly where it was kind of targeting a global audience. They had kind of a Japanese focus stream followed immediately by what they ended up doing is they kind of did like immediate translation, not a recorded voiceover, but the original Japanese footage with translation in progress. I don't know if I'm describing that right, but it was
live interpretation.
Yeah, so focus for an English audience with the trailers would have also like the English subtitles, even though the trailers were in Japanese. So we logged on. We went ahead and live tweeted this streaming event, which was for about a half hour, maybe a little longer. And they announced 6 projects. They went ahead at the very start and said we are going to announce 6 games here. Now it ended up starting a little bit slow. They first introduced the mobile game Keshi Keshi, which is like a puzzle game, kind of like Threes, or I don't play like these strategy type games. Then they went through this really awkward thing. I don't know why I'm going in this order. This is kind of the order they did it in the show.
Like, it's like the Keshi Keshi is just a match 3 mobile game, free to play coming
Match
out.
3, that's the word I couldn't think of.
That's it has like an eraser aesthetic. It looks quite cute. I'm kind of interested to see more about it.
Actually, let's work our way backwards because I want to get to the thing that's last. So the big stinger at the end was an announcement for Dragon Quest 12, The Flames of Faith. Though it was, unfortunately, beyond that, there wasn't a ton else to go off of. It was one of those big hyped logo reveal type announcements, which we've seen in the past. But so there are a few details that it is announced that it's aiming for a simultaneous worldwide release, which is obviously something that's exciting for the series. The logo introduction itself is doing like this big like fire and brimstone and kind of almost, I hate this word, edgy sort of like appearance to it. There was a little bit of a back and forth between like series creative director Yuji Horii and the MC of the event, talking about like, what is this game going to be like? And Yuji Horii said 2 key things about Dragon Quest 12. He said, well, I don't know if he said this or if this was just described in the presentation itself, but the phrasing "Dragon Quest for adults" was used.
No, he said that literally.
Oh, he did say that. Okay.
Yes.
And then the second thing that he brought up is that they are looking at tweaking the command style battle system that we all know. They didn't say that they were eliminating it. Some people immediately jumped and say like, "Oh, Dragon Quest is going to be an action RPG now." But no, basically they said in very vague terms that they're looking at tweaking the system. So yeah, that's what we know about Dragon Quest 12. What do we think about it?
There's actually a little bit more. So they announced that this game is going to be made on Unreal Engine 5, and that they are actively recruiting for it, and it is early in development, so it might be a while before we see more.
Yeah, I feel like it was just way too early for a reveal at this point. This is like
also Yuji Horii did go on Twitter, and it was sort of like a reassurance tweet, like, "Don't worry, if you like turn-based games, you'll be fine." So
I guess that then kind of leads to the question: if they're tweaking the command-based battle system, but it's going to be turn-based, what do you think that could be? Like maybe just some sort of like turn order alteration, or some sort of like
there are different flavors of turn-based. You have like the press turn battle system from Shin Megami Tensei. You have like the Bravely Default 2, the way they handle it. Even Bravely Default 1 has a different kind of turn-based battle system than the Bravely Default 2. So it's like, there are variations of turn-based that they can.
I was thinking something like FF12, like turn-based, where you can kind of like have free movement, I guess,
like a cooldown MMO system.
So that's the thing. Dragon Quest XI had quote unquote free movement as an option for its battle system. Like there was actually like an arena you can travel around in 3D in Dragon Quest XI as an option. Some people chose that option, and like it really didn't add anything aside from like you can move your character around and that's it. But it didn't really fundamentally change up the way you played that game.
Maybe if they add some more mechanics to it, it's like, oh yeah, if you were able to attack them from the rear or something, there's some bonus
Yeah,
damage.
there could be
or something.
maybe like a positioning element of some sort.
Yeah. So
You know what it brings to mind for me is like, and I say this as someone who is not really knowledgeable on turn-based and is not knowledgeable on Dragon Quest, so maybe ignore me, but the first thing that came to my mind was how Final Fantasy 13 did it. Didn't that make like quite big changes to how
that's
turn-based?
that's not. I don't know. It is kind of turn based, but it's very.
It's weird. Yeah, it's weird.
HTB.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, ignore me then. But that's what pops in my head when I hear like.
Yeah, the thing is,
changes.
whenever you have this sort of what's the word I'm looking for, Brian? Abstracted battle system, you can do kind of a ton of different things in terms of how like a turn is counted, or how a move is counted, or how an action is counted, and who knows what they can do? We could speculate all day, really.
Yeah, that's
So-
that's why I said there's a really horrible thing. Like I'm not a big fan of how the way they revealed this game because there's so little to work off of that like any possibility people will throw out. There's already people say, "Oh, it's gonna be action now," even though they clearly said like, we're gonna change the turn based, not necessarily discarding it. But that's kind of the problem with this kind of reveal. And like I'm excited for Dragon Quest Top. I want to learn more about it, but I just feel like they should have unveiled this game the way they did the Dragon Quest XI, something more concrete, something more substantial than the way they did this.
Well, I remember
and
when
not
they
even like a
announced
key
11.
art or a character design or anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess the 11 reveal was better. They showed the main character, and that was it. And you waited a couple years for more information. I just hope we're not stuck for 5 years before the game's out.
It's gonna become the next Elden Ring.
It's got the same like fire aesthetic to it, so maybe.
Oh god.
But yeah, I think this is just like the Bayonetta 3 or the
Metroid
Elder
Prime
Scrolls
4.
6, yeah, or Metroid Prime 4. So it's one of those things where it's like, I guess keep it on the back burner. They just really wanted the stinger to have it at the big reveal at the end, even though it maybe wasn't ready. I don't know.
I wonder. I'm not like knowledgeable enough about this, but like when they are part of this was also is almost like a recruitment drive. Like they posted like literally like if you're knowledgeable with Unreal Engine, we are hiring for this project sort of things. I wonder if they if it's advantageous for them to announce it this way so they can hire people to work on it.
It's also really awkward too because wasn't this like either the day before or the day of when the Epic finally allowed like release that UE5 demo to
It was
the
really
public?
close.
Yeah. So like obviously I have to imagine they already had access to it like for months before,
Right.
maybe, but it's still I don't know. This is a game that I don't think is gonna like we'll see another word of in like 3 to 4 years.
It feels like it.
So it feels like that Starfield Elder Scrolls 6 moment.
Elden Ring. Yep.
Yeah.
All these logo games.
It's like, okay, I guess it exists, sure.
Mhm.
But I'm really curious to see where they take it. But this is like people have this weird mindset, especially people who haven't played Dragon Quest. Like, oh, finally, it's a Dragon Quest for adults. Dragon Quest games have had adult themes for a really
Yeah.
long time.
A lot of
Heavy
the games, I mean, one of the games, literally, somebody killed your entire family.
Yeah, dude.
Like,
I
shit,
mean-
have you played Dragon Quest V?
Yeah,
Yeah,
of course
5
I have.
is like pressingly adult in a way.
It's like they have dark themes. I guess they just want to say it's like probably the artwork and people are trying to get this impression that it's more made for a younger audience. I guess I don't know.
And I'm like a casual Dragon Quest fan. I feel like an imposter in this room. I did play and love 11, and that's the only one I've been able to get to so far. But even that game, going from like Act 2, the ending there was really kind of like somber and very poignant. Like even not even adult, like, oh yeah, people die or
Mature.
whatever. But like
Yeah,
but like
blood.
even like in the emotionally dark or the emotionally like resonant there, it was just like I don't know, like why you feel you have to market like we're moving beyond that to something different, adult in a different way. It's just like I hope. I don't know. I feel like I would be more confident in this if that statement was kind of avoided. Adjusting the command system, sure. There's a lot we talked about. There's lots of ways they can kind of change it up while keeping the core intact. But just what sort of story is this going to tell? But this again goes back to that they showed so little that we can take one statement and just kind of run with it as far as we want. It's probably just best just like simmer down, just give it a few years to incubate, and then come back to it because everything at this point is just it's speculation. So Dragon Quest 12.
Hey, it exists.
So,
they said so.
yeah, it exists. They told us that we have a logo. Now, this was potentially the even more exciting announcement, maybe the even more surprising one of the show, because I think we all kind of went in expecting, what if we get our first glimpse of Dragon Quest 12? What we kind of went in and didn't expect was that we got the announcement of Dragon Quest 3 HD 2D Remake. And the key term there is HD 2D, which is Square Enix's internal name for the engine stylings that was introduced with Octopath Traveler and followed up with Project Triangle Strategy. So to put it plainly, a Dragon Quest 3 remake in the Octopath Traveler engine, quote unquote, was announced. And like this is something that looked beautiful. It looks really refined compared to like how Octopath Traveler did back in 2018. And Dragon Quest 3, which I haven't played, but I've heard is like a kind of like a landmark entry for the series. So this kind of really blew up on social media as like, wow, finally, like Square Enix is making, because when Octopath Traveler first came out, it was like, I want to see Final Fantasy VI in this engine. I want to see Chrono Trigger in this engine. But nope, the first one we get from that style is Dragon Quest 3.
That's a big fan favorite in Japan, so it makes a lot of sense.
I also
think
think it
we
makes a
have
lot
a-
of sense because it's directly linked to 11. So I feel like it makes sense to go with a free remake.
So I know we have like actually a post on our site from a Japanese poll from 2017 about like what's their favorite RPG. I think Persona 5 won because it had just released not too long ago then. But like Dragon Quest 3, about 30 years old at that point, was number 2. Like it is super popular in Japan even now. Like it's one of those, it's Dragon Quest in general, but it seems like especially 3 is one of those types of games where everyone in a quote, everyone has played it, even if they're not like they don't play video games. Like, oh yeah, even I played Dragon Quest 3. It's like a phenomenon.
But before we get too deep into this, they did also mention that they are planning this to have a worldwide simultaneous release similar to 12. So we talk about how it's super popular in Japan, but they are also like, it's not going to be that it's made for them. It's being made for with a global audience in mind. So that's also obviously really exciting.
Yeah, and this is really cool also because the way they kind of frame the trailer. Obviously, yeah, we got like some slow walking shots that like really show off like the visuals of the game, but they showed off like the battle screen as well. And I think one of the interesting things about the battles in this game is that they have this this lineup of your characters in the line, but when you actually select like the attack command, it'll like shift itself into like a first person perspective, and then show the like, oh, you're casting a fireball or you're doing a sword slash, and that's all done all in first person, those attack effects. So it's an interesting way to kind of evoke that classic Dragon Quest feel that a lot of people have fallen in love with.
And the lineup stylings, Adam, compared to Golden Sun.
Yeah, it's
so
kind of
kinda-
funny. It's reminiscent of Golden Sun, even though like
Yeah.
Golden Sun has nothing to do with any of this. It just sort of looks like Golden
it's just
Sun.
a camera angle. It's just the way.
Yeah,
it looks.
but it's like a camera angle that is very evocative of Golden
Yes.
Sun, and not many games have done it. So
Yeah.
I did see some people kind of be like a little bit cynical, and they're like, did you know Octopath Traveler is just an Unreal Engine 4? That's what you mean when you say that engine. But I'm like, come on, like,
There's a very specific style that's like, sure, it is on the Unreal Engine 4, but there's a very specific subset of games that have been using this engine now.
right? Like, I am using the word engine to carry engine and art style implementation. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't want to
Yeah.
like just have that list of caveats. It's built to look like Octopath Traveler, and I do know that Octopath Traveler did get some criticism, and even Project Triangle Strategy when I previewed it back in March, that it kind of does a lot of post processing that I don't think benefits the game terribly in terms of like bloom and like depth of field effects.
Mhm.
From what we can tell from our short trailer here, it seems like it might have been pared back a bit. It's a little hard to judge with so little footage, but it looks really clean. It looks really nice. Like even
Yeah,
I
they
who
keep
kind of
they're refining the look. And I
Yeah.
think trying to, avoid some of that. Like the Octopath. Octopath had like that, I don't even know what you call it, like that fog window depth of field thing. That
like the
seems like
Vigmanning or whatever you call it.
yeah, that seems like they're easing up on that.
Yeah, the
So
bloom was
they're
a
refining
little bit
it.
too much.
Yeah, and I guess since we're on that, the developers on this is Amada KK and Team Asano, so the Bravely Default 2 developers are working on this. There's an interesting thing of like, why is there a Spike Chunsoft logo in the trailer? Because Chunsoft developed the original Dragon Quest 3 game. That's why.
Yep.
They also, during the stream event, Yuji Horii kind of coyly suggested about the possible re-release of Dragon Quest 1 and 2 in a similar style. And they really played it up like, are you allowed to say that? I don't know.
They had like a horn that was supposed to be like a bleep sensor. Like they kept horning Hori when he was talking too much. It was kind of jokey.
So they were really playing into it. Like it's not
I
an
mean-
announcement, but suggestion. Go
It's
ahead.
as close to an announcement as we'll get, considering they were really hardcore on not and making sure that they didn't share any of the platforms for Dragon Quest 12. So
I mean, there were not really any platforms announced for pretty much anything.
Yeah, unfortunately, like we know it'll go to a home console, or home
Mhm.
consoles, but that's it.
Xbox exclusive.
You might
Yeah.
see it on Game Pass because they've been kind of pushing for like with the Dragon Quest builders and stuff like that. But
that
that's-
would be a
we're-
really weird thing to see. I mean, imagine a Dragon Quest game being Xbox exclusive. I mean,
That's
I-
not
I-
going to happen, but
I
I
don't
can see it
think that's
being
going
on
to happen, but
Xbox.
I could see them pushing for instead of getting it like on Switch later or then on like the we kind of had this weird tiered rollout with Dragon Quest 11, right? The initial release. Well, we had the 3DS release along with the initial release. I hope I get the order right. Like, did the 3DS release alongside the base game in Japan?
yeah, it did.
Yes.
Yeah,
The
in fact,
3DS
there
version
was-
actually has a little bit more content in a weird way back when it
Also-
first came out.
yeah. Also, there was a limited edition that allowed you to get both the 3DS and PS4 version at the same time, which is actually kind of crazy when you think about it, because they had to get permission from both Sony and Nintendo to sell games for the different console in the same box.
That's crazy. But yeah,
And-
we'll in 2024 we'll see Dragon Quest 12, and then in 2026 we'll see Dragon Quest 12X. It's X because
I
it's
guess
for adults.
well, before we completely hop off that Dragon Quest 12, I think we didn't mention also that Hori did mention that him, Toriyama, and Sugiyama are working on it. So for better or for worse,
So yay,
it's
yay, boo.
yeah.
basically.
So Sugiyama's still on it, unfortunately, but it is what it is.
Yeah, still gonna have apparently that Toriyama baked art style and not move on from that like some op-ed suggested they should.
I
So
think it's just too much.
to me,
into Dragon
thank
Quest
goodness.
now. It's like, if you don't have Toriyama working on Dragon Quest, it's like, is it even Dragon Quest anymore? You get like a different art style, and it's like, I don't know. I think it's been too many years as part of the franchise.
Yeah, I don't want to say like they're not allowed to move on from that, but if they're considering that, then at that point, is what you're creating could just be its own thing. So yeah. So the third major global announcement from this Dragon Quest 35th anniversary event was the announcement of Dragon Quest Treasures. Now, this one we actually kind of knew about going in a weird fashion. We had originally gotten some teased artwork about an upcoming Dragon Quest Monsters project that we had just some artwork of a child, Eric and Mia from Dragon Quest 11. And that's kind of all we had for years, was just kind of like this one tease that this Monsters project was in the works. And now we get this 1-minute trailer showing the same game that was in production, only now it is under its new like sub-label Dragon Quest Treasures, with the additional footnote that they did also mention that a Dragon Quest Monsters title, like in that series formally, is still like on the table and in the works. So this is kind of like in spin-off of spin-off mode. So I think it looks really cute. I think it looks kind of like we probably got the most footage from this game out of all the out of those 3 major projects. Adam, I don't know if you have a big opinion on this. What do you think about what we saw from the newly announced Dragon Quest Treasures?
He went out of his way to say that this is not a monsters game. It's not a traditional RPG, but it's still an RPG. And all he said was like treasure hunting and Eric and Mia's childhood. So I don't know if it's going to be more like a loot game, like a dungeon crawler. Sort of some sort of spin-off RPG.
Yeah, also targeting a worldwide simultaneous launch. So at least for these 3 games, it's cool that has been a common trend during all these announcements. Even though we don't have details on release windows or platforms or much of anything, the plan is to have these launched globally, all 3 of these projects. And now I guess we get to the that was the back half of the presentation. So it ended strongly. The first half of the presentation was a bit different. We already talked about the Keshi Keshi puzzle game, which looked cute and fun. And then this was the oddest part of the global showing. We ended up getting a montage trailer for the online RPG Dragon Quest X, which when that first started playing footage, obviously there was kind of like a lot of hype. James and I were actually kind of in a chat room kind of watching over it. And we actually allowed ourselves to get a little bit excited for a very brief period of time. But then it kind of felt weird as this montage trailer kept going through the recent updates to Dragon Quest X. It moved into version 5, the newly announced or the newly released 5.5, and then teasing version 6. These are basically like their major chapters. All in Japanese for a Japanese audience, followed by a footnote in the thumbnail saying there are no plans for a worldwide release. So this was kind of a bit of an unforced error where this is a globally focused stream, spending time talking about this 10-year-old game at this point that obviously is still getting a lot of support in Japan. Potentially the option to maybe, like we've seen it before come out. We've seen like Phantasy Star Online 2 arrive in English 8 years after launch. So it's not like the precedent's not there from a different studio, but nope, there were no plans for Dragon Quest X. It was just marketing for the new stuff for people who are already playing it.
Good old Phil to go announce it at the Microsoft E3, obviously. So.
But yeah, it was kind of a weird. It's kind of a low light, but not like maliciously so. Just like I don't know why they showed it. Well, maybe I know a little bit, and that kind of goes.
Well, here's basically how I see it. I'm not saying this is what happened. But basically, Square Enix envisioned this is a Japanese-only stream, but we're going to include pieces of it for an international audience, not implying, they didn't mean to imply that all of it was international. But now, is that the way they should have done it? Probably not, but that's how they were thinking. Like, it's a Japanese stream with pieces of it for an international audience. So.
And then to this kind of, I mean, I know we're kind of rattling through these announcements kind of quick, but this kind of has to be bookended right onto that. Following that weird montage of Dragon Quest X's newest updates, we got a follow-up for Dragon Quest X Offline, which I think that title kind of belies what we saw a bit. It's like it showed like a game with a very different art style, with like the deformed kind of chibi look, going through some of the events that I had just seen in the montage preceding it. And again, this montage for Dragon Quest X Offline did not specifically say that it was intended for a worldwide audience, but unlike the Dragon Quest X showing, it did not specifically say that there were no plans. So I hope that was clear that we have this announcement of Dragon Quest X that might be used as a launching point to somehow introduce that game in a particular fashion for a global audience.
I'm just going to say this right here. If this is the only way that we get Dragon Quest X in the West, I will be incredibly disappointed. Like, not even.
It's looking likely.
Look, no. I mean, I can understand saying, well, at least we get it in some way, but no, we aren't. this isn't Dragon Quest X. It's an entirely different game that they're calling Dragon Quest X offline when it's.
I wouldn't know. I haven't played both games, so
Well, it says
might be
offline
you
for a
can
reason, right?
literally look at the trailer and you can tell it's not the same game. It's literally an entirely different game.
It might have the same story beats though, so.
But the art
I would
style's
play
different.
FF11 offline. Come on.
Like the art style's different. The gameplay's looking like it. Well, the gameplay's obviously different. There's no guarantee the story will be completely the same. Like I understand that they don't want to release another MMO over here, but I feel it just.
You know what? Like
I can only speak for myself. I can only speak for myself, but I would rather them not bring anything Dragon Quest X over, rather than give us Diet Dragon Quest X, because to me that feels like just rubbing salt in the wounds.
I think that's that take feels a little bit extreme to me, but that's just me. I'm thinking this still like I'm thinking about like wider audience people of like I think if this is like the version of Dragon Quest X that gets released here, that'll appeal to a lot of Dragon Quest players because Dragon Quest players like single player RPGs, and maybe going into an MMO for another Dragon Quest game is not a really alluring offer for a lot of that fan base, So I can see it. I can see it.
I'm going to try it. I know it's like a dumbed down version of it, but hey, not everyone's committed to playing MMO.
Okay, that's the thing. We don't know if it's a dumbed down version or not. Like this is just like it might have people might just want to see the Dragon Quest X story, but don't want to like engage with an MMO or pay for an MMO or whatever.
I'm not saying it's dumbed down. I'm just saying, and this really shouldn't be controversial based off of what we've already seen. It's not the same game. It's not Dragon Quest X. It's a different game that has bits and pieces of the Dragon Quest X experience.
I don't know how you can get bits and pieces off of that trailer without knowing the story of Dragon Quest X. It might have like all like the big content beats of Dragon Quest X in it. I have no idea because I haven't played that game. I haven't played this game, so I don't really know like what's controversial about saying I don't know. It could be something cool.
It can be something cool. It's just again. Look, I know you're trying to play devil's advocate, but you can look at the trailer and tell that it's just not the same experience.
I'm not really playing devil's advocate.
I'm just gonna ask: does anyone remember the Final Fantasy 15 Pocket Edition? Did anyone go through that? And
no, I didn't.
No, but I understand immediately like why you're bringing that up. Like, is that the same game?
but base Final Fantasy 15 wasn't an MMO, so it's kind of a weird comparison. I'm just thinking that like people who don't want to play an MMO but still want to like see the Dragon Quest X story for themselves after like hearing maybe praise from people who they know who play it or the Japanese audience, but they're like, oh, I don't really want to play an MMO to like see it. Like this might be a cool thing, I don't know, but
I think
a lot of
this.
I feel like I should stress that I don't think that the existence of Dragon Quest X offline is a bad thing. All I'm saying is that if it's used as an excuse so that we never get the MMO, I would be incredibly disappointed because it's not the same experience. And that's something that you can't say isn't true, even just looking at the trailer. It's going to be a different type of game. It could be very good. It probably will be good. I'm just saying that it's not going to be Dragon Quest X. It's something else.
What were we going to say, Adam?
What I was going to say was just part of this sort of kind of boils down to like, even if the storyline in Dragon Quest X and Dragon Quest X offline is exactly the same, if that's the main thing you care about is the storyline, then it's a pretty good substitute because the story is identical. But if you are really big into like the gameplay mechanics, the presentation, and the style of it, video games are multifaceted, complex things, and that's going to be completely different. So, James has thought like the experience will be different, but to some people, maybe that storyline element, if it's a close enough representation, as long as that itself, the storyline is equivalent, then that might be all that matters to them.
Well, even that's a bit of a flawed comparison, considering how the presentation will tie into the way the story is presented. So.
We're just arguing in circles here. It's a non-starter.
Yeah, I guess I do want to also clarify that this game has not been announced to have an English release. Like the only thing that we're kind of basing this off is the absence of that statement from the 10 trailer where it literally kind of threw out there no plans. So this is like no, this is like the double negative. There are no statements saying no plans, sort of thing.
I just
Yeah,
hope it's cool and it gets localized. That's all I want. I know it's crazy.
I do see where James is coming from, especially when Josh had mentioned like, what if I don't want to play an MMO? Or here it's like you don't have a choice unless I guess you always have the choice to learn Japanese, right? But
then go do it. Then for the people who want the MMO that might not come over, then go learn Japanese and go sub over there. I don't know.
I'll do it.
All right. All right.
Well, I mean, look, I just want them to confirm whether, like, I know they'll say no, there's no plans, but if they never intend to bring the MMO over, just fucking say it so I can bother to get a sub.
Like they already said it with that nor planned for worldwide release. I feel like that's
there's a difference between no plans and we're not going to do it. I understand why, because it's corporate.
They're never going to outright say they're not going to do it.
They're always going to leave that door cracked open. Right. Yeah,
I think they should though. I think like
if they want to localize that MMO, I would definitely give that a try. Because I'm interested enough in it, and I've heard people say enough good things about it to make me want to try it. I'm not opposed to the idea, but I'm saying that this is probably this Dragon Quest X offline alternative option is probably the one that makes the most sense business wise if they want to keep just one big MMO in the West, which is FF14. Because if you introduce Dragon Quest X, the MMO, to the West, that'll divide up that big player base for sure.
I will say this, that I think that having any option at all, especially to experience at least the story, is better than none. Like, if you remember Final Fantasy 15, when they had to like cancel the last couple of DLC things, they still released that book, and the book obviously wasn't what people wanted. It wasn't like exactly right, but it was better than all those concepts and ideas never appearing, right? So like, for my money, even though I'm not really a Dragon Quest guy, it's better to have it in any form than none at all.
And then think about like moving forward, like when you're like archiving this tale, because all MMOs don't last forever. So
unless for Final Fantasy 11,
we'll see. But one day Dragon Quest X, the MMO, will close. So what happens to that content then?
It just one thing to kind of wrap up this Dragon Quest talk. As you can kind of see, as like a through line for all of these, is that there's very little in the way of release windows for any of these. The couple of exceptions are that the Keshi Keshi puzzle game will release in Japan this year. A Western release is in the works. And then Dragon Quest X Offline is planned to release in Japan next year in 2022. As far as I can tell, those are the only real dates of any sort that we got.
Yep.
Well, also, before I move on, there was one other thing that was not mentioned in the English-facing presentation, but in the just ahead of it, we did get a little bit. This is to Josh's dismay, of a peek at the upcoming Dragon Quest Infinity Strash: The Adventures of Dai. Or actually, I guess it's
actually
Infinity
called
Strash,
Infinity Strash Dragon Quest. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Infinity Strash, Dragon Quest: The Adventures of Dai. This is an action RPG that was announced last year, following that classic manga that now has a rerunning anime today. Still no announcement of an English version of the game. We got a bunch of new screenshots. I guess, Josh, you're the one that can most talk to what you've seen here, because I know that you've been keeping up to date with the current version of the anime.
Yeah, the new current anime is really freaking good, and I wish more people would give it a shot. But maybe it's when it's done. This is interesting because the screenshots that released, some of them depicted like scenes from what goes on in that show and the manga. But there's one gameplay screenshot that they released that had like a party of 3, had Dai, Pop, and Avan, characters from the series, but the UI and the look of it is very evocative of that Trials of Mana remake, and I really wonder if the Trials of Mana remake team, or at least parts of that team, are as working on this game, because it's so similar, like UI wise and look wise, even having that party of 3 like in Trials of Mana. So I'm interested to see more of it in motion. Obviously, they couldn't show off something more substantial. There was like a producer's letter saying, we're still working on it. Here's a few screenshots for now, but there's definitely still working hard on it. Um, I I really wonder what the scope of this game is as well, because in the initial trailer, events that happened well late into the current series, like it showed there, and then this screenshot supposedly is like from early on in the series. So I wonder if they're gonna try to fit the entire Adventure of Dai storyline into this game, because it is a very beefy like story. So I was hoping there's like, I hope they don't like cut it off like at some endpoint like halfway through the story and whatnot. But I'm really looking forward to see more of it. There's really not much more to say, but it leaves me a lot of questions. And if the Trials of Mana remake team is working on this, I'm even more excited because that was a pretty good remake. The way it played.
As far as I can tell, this game will come out. No English release announced. Planned to come out in Japan in this year, but there are no platforms announced. Is that the case, Adam?
I think so.
Yeah, they just said it's
Yes.
like for console, but they never announced specific platforms for this.
Uh,
So who knows?
Well, I remember when this game was
it's not a
announced back
mobile
in
game.
when it was announced in May last year. I remember I was pretty excited for it. I thought it looked really neat. They have some really good music that I'm pretty sure is from a new composer, which is always
Yeah.
a good thing.
Yeah, it's not
Uh,
Sugiyama. It's I think Yuki Hayashi is working on this. I think he's
so
also working
this
on the TV anime also
Yeah,
at the
so
moment.
I'm bummed that we got 3 like announcements of simultaneous releases, but then not even anything here. Like even a delayed release here, I think would have been cool to announce. Maybe like as for that anime, it's not even like got an English announcement as far as I know. So I don't know if they just feel like the Dai branding won't carry here, but even
It's
though
subtitled in English, so I mean they do subtitles in English when it airs in Japan. I don't know if they have like a dub in the works for it or whatnot. I haven't heard of that, but and
Well,
we're also
also
getting
Square Enix
go ahead.
announced you're going to say the same
Yeah,
thing, the mobile game.
yeah.
so
And
what go
we're
ahead.
also
What's the
getting
mobile game announcement?
so the Adventure of Dai has a mobile game in development, and that seems to be like a simultaneous worldwide release for that game. So that's like it even had like an English closed beta like a few months ago, I think.
Oh yeah, I remember talking about that.
So I mean, there is a little glimmer of hope here, and hopefully, even if it doesn't come out to the West somehow, I'll still import the Japanese release because I enjoy it so much.
Yeah, lots of Dragon Quest in our future, even though it seems like it's a bit in the far future for now. Uh, Maybe that puzzle game will be surprisingly good. We'll see.
Hey, Match 3 is hype.
So unfortunately, kind of playing second billing to the Dragon Quest deluge of announcements. Earlier this week, we did also have a 30th anniversary stream for the Metal Max series, which we got a few announcements out to talk about. And I'm going to be leaning on Adam here because I have not played any of these. The first announcement is Metal Max Xeno Reborn is coming west for PlayStation 4, Switch, and PC next year. So Metal Max Xeno released in 2018 for those same consoles. Well, at least for PlayStation 4. And now we're getting kind of is it a remake or reimagining on for where they're adding in the Switch and the PC version with Metal Max Xeno Reborn.
So Metal Max Xeno was a PlayStation 4 RPG. I think it's sort of like Metal Max 5, but they just didn't call it 5, I believe. It came out in 2018 for PlayStation 4. It was localized by NAS America. It's honestly not a great game. The only thing I'll give it is that it has some somewhat nifty tank customization. So the whole thing with Metal Max is that it's kind of like a standard JRPG, but there's also some sort of element where you're creating a tank, like a literal tank with treads and a cannon and whatnot and weaponry. And you sometimes do battles with these tanks. And there is some decent customization there, but the rest of the game is honestly pretty mediocre overall. Now, they announced that they're basically remaking the game in a new engine, but it's not really like a reimagining or whatever. It seems like it's pretty much the same game, same structure, things are in the same spots. Everything works the same way, just in a new engine. So that's why they call it Metal Max Xeno Reborn. It came out in Japan last year, and it's getting a localization next year by P-Cube, actually, which is slightly interesting. Localized by NAS America, but P-Cube is doing this new release for it. I know they changed a few things. I don't know if it's going to be enough to make the game better than average, but it's coming out. I guess you can try it.
I know you can
Does that
try
answer
it
your
out.
question?
You
Yeah, I
can.
might try it.
I want to hear back the comparison between the two.
And then tailing off from the announcement of a localization of Metal Max Xeno Reborn, the sequel to the game is now titled Metal Max Wild West. It was initially revealed as Metal Max Xeno Reborn 2 for Japan, but this will release in 2022 for Japan. So the game it's got this new engine remaster of sorts. We've also got more details of the upcoming sequel, which will also release for PlayStation 4 and Switch, though it seems like an English localization for the sequel has yet to be announced.
And they
Yeah,
didn't. They actually didn't really even reveal that much about the sequel, other than like the title and like a few really quick screen grabs. But otherwise, we really don't know much about it, other than that it is a sequel to Metal Max Xeno. So same characters, storyline continuing, things like that.
I don't know that from the screenshot I saw some guy has like an orange fur coat going on. That's kind of neat. I think the kind of the general setting is neat. It's like a post-apocalyptic like western town going on there. You're like in a saloon of some sorts. I don't know. It's kind of all over the place.
That's actually pretty common to some of the games, at least the ones I played. It is a mix of post-apocalyptic and Wild West. So that's actually not that's not uncharted territory for the series.
Yeah.
So.
And then as a third announcement on this Metal Max 30th anniversary stream, we got a name for what was previously known as Project Wolf, which we talked about on an earlier podcast, maybe 3 months ago. Project Wolf is now Metal Saga Hangyaku no Rokua. Sorry if I pronounced that wrong, but this is the kind of the sub series that is underneath a different publisher. It's being developed and published by Success. So Adam, tell me about what do we know about Metal Saga from this
game
new
is
title
by
and this
far
sub-series.
more interesting. This game is by far more interesting to me.
I agree.
Because Metal Saga, like you said, it's still part of like the Metal Max series broadly, but right, the Metal Saga name is the name used by. So Metal Max is Katakawa, and the developer of Xeno, for instance, is Cattle Call, but it's whoever Katakawa basically hires to develop the games for them. Because Katakawa owns the Metal Max IP like name. Metal Saga, it's kind of an awkward situation where it's kind of the same franchise, but the Metal Saga name is owned and developed by Success. And there's been a handful of Metal Saga games. The only one that we received was the first, which was on PlayStation 2. I believe it was the first, called Metal Saga in the West. And that game, it's one of those games that it's got a very unique style to it. It actually, intentionally or not, it is somewhat like a Square Enix Saga game, where it's you're sort of set on a world, like an open world, with not a big story like premise or push, where it really just kind of just sets you here and like go explore, go find stuff, go trip, kind of stumble into these different story events that happen as you kind of wander into them. And it's got a really cool style to it. It is very much like a Western theme in places, as well as a post-apocalyptic. And it's kind of a neat game. It didn't really review very well because it is very weird. It's very different from like a traditional Japanese
Saga
RPG
game.
Well, yeah, but I say, like, I've
exactly.
heard this before.
So you can maybe see why I had some affinity with it. I've heard that some of the Saga games that came out after that, I think there was maybe a few on DS that we never got. I might be wrong. I'm not looking it up in front of me here. But I heard that those weren't as good or weren't as interesting. So we'll see. But I'm interested to see what this newest Metal Saga game will be like. If it can channel any of that style from the PlayStation 2 Metal Saga game, I'm interested.
I forgot the PS2 game they got, was that turn-based?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Because like
Yep.
when I look at the description for this new one, like they're calling it like live battles. Like there's like seamless transition to, there's like a seamless transition from the series traditional command-based battles. So maybe they're going for more action.
To be clear, like the the combat system in Metal Saga on PS2, I could take it or leave it. It's more like the structural open, go wherever, do whatever sort of style to it that I really appreciated. So if they can keep that in some sense, that's the main thing that matters to me. And hopefully the character interactions and the story bits to it are a bit more interesting than what's in Metal Max Xeno. It's, being developed by a different team. So, who knows, but
I don't know how Metal Max Xeno fared in terms of adversary. Was it self-serious? Because I remember Metal Saga being very whimsical.
Yeah, Metal Saga is very silly in times. It's literally you can fight these haunted. So in Metal Saga, there's this one point in the game where you're in an abandoned warehouse and you're fighting these haunted refrigerators.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
That's your enemy. You're fighting these refrigerators that are haunted and they're attacking you. Literally refrigerators. You're not mishearing me. And then there's also other enemies that are they're walking turrets, and the legs that the turrets are walking on, they're I don't know. The best way to put this is maybe they're scandalous fishnet stocking legs in high heels.
Oh yeah.
With turrets. Yeah. And so there's just really silly enemy design. So not like a metal leg, but like a flesh woman's leg with fishnet stockings and high heels with a turret on top. And it's just really silly, goofy stuff like that. But there's a lot of charm and whimsy and kind of even heart to some of the character interactions in the game. And Metal Max Xeno is kind of out the edge.
Oh, okay. So I never touched Metal Max Xeno, so I didn't know what.
So bluntly speaking, Metal Max Xeno, there's basically two story impetuses. One, let's have sex.
Okay.
Two, let's kill the demons. That's
all
it.
right.
Those are all the motivations. It's let's have sex and let's kill the demons.
I'm getting the Reborn game then.
And it's pretty much as blunt as that too. So I'm hoping Metal Saga is just a little bit more whimsy, creative, weird. I'll take it. But it'll probably be a while if we get it.
Yeah.
But
so yeah, to summarize a little bit, just to make sure that we didn't the details didn't get lost in the weeds. So the Metal Max Xeno Reborn is already out in Japan as of late last year. It was announced for an English release next year. The Project Wolf is now a new Metal Saga game with that new title that I didn't pronounce right earlier. Not announced for an English localization. And then the Metal Max Xeno 2 sequel is also not announced for localization. But
that
seems like it's
Metal Max Wild West.
Yeah. I guess there is a footnote here for the Metal Saga game that it was noted that it will support more languages other than Japanese, but it doesn't specify beyond that generic statement. So, all right, this is one stream event that I didn't even bring up at the start, and I think George will be excited that we put this on here. Is that we got an announcement early about a new state of play from Sony. Covering Horizon Forbidden West, showing 15 minutes of gameplay. Yeah,
normalized fighting game supers in your third-person action games.
Yes, it looks so good.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of funny, stupid but funny memes about what's it going to be like when a PlayStation 4 tries to run this game. So it's, I don't know. To me, I think the game looks really nice. It's obviously a graphical powerhouse as expected, but also I thought Horizon Zero Dawn was kind of very safe and paint by numbers, and when I look at this, it's I think the underwater stuff that they showed looks really neat. I think the beach environment looks really cool. But that's kind of my main takeaway. Beyond that, I think the combat looks samey. It looks like a sequel, which I suppose it is a sequel. So that's not a dig. That's just what it looks like to me. So let's hand it off to George. What did you see here in the Horizon Forbidden West showcase?
For one, it's probably the best looking game I've ever seen. And when Zero Dawn came out, I was like, oh, I thought it looked really good, but it didn't hit me as hard as it hit some people. But then I saw this footage, I was like, holy crap! It looks so good. The colors just pop so much better. And yeah, I think you're right in most regards. It is. Well, it isn't just a sequel, but it does do a lot of sequel-y things. It looks the same, but all of the things that they're introducing, some of the free climbing stuff, the grappling hook, the glider that's very Breath of the Wild. Sorry, everyone. They all
have
look like improvements.
A lot
They
of
all
better
look.
gliders, by the way.
They all look really good. And yeah, like Zero Dawn. I've said it before many podcasts ago that I didn't understand the hype until I finished it, and then I was like, yeah, this is really good. So like Forbidden West for me isn't like, oh my god, this is the PS5 like showcase. This is the game like I'm waiting for. That's more Ratchet and Clank for me. But yeah, I'm really excited for this. It looks fantastic. I don't think we're getting it this year though.
Yeah, they did not. I don't even know if they even said 2021 in the stream at all. They just didn't say anything about the date. So it's just like,
Yeah, they said in the PlayStation blog they were like, it's progressing. Like we're hoping to get it out this year, but like, there's difference between hoping and it being fact. But it looks fantastic. Aloy like talks herself way more than she did in the original, and it's kind of annoying.
Yeah,
That was the same thing with the first footage of the first Horizon Zero Dawn, where a lot
That's
of people
true.
commented
That's true.
that she spoke to herself a lot.
It's
They want
E3
to
demo
warn
fever,
people-
isn't it?
Yeah, they want to warn people that Horizon Forbidden West, like every AAA game, has the characters speak with them, that will talk to themselves way more than they should.
Yeah, at least it's not, as long as it's not like Days Gone level where it's like muttering, it's fine. But
Yeah,
it's the
Tomb Raider.
first. It's the first footage of like a game I've seen in a long time that screamed to me like E3 demo. Like I was looking at it, it's like this is so. I believe that's what the game will look like and play like, but it was so like when that like heavy armored guy came, he's like, "You can't hurt me," and then she like does something. It's like, "I just did," or whatever it is. I was like, "Yeah, that's not how it's gonna be in the full game." That's E3 demo, but it looks good. It looks really good.
very buffed out edges, vertical slice.
Yes, precisely.
It's not saying it's a lie, but it's just idealized to be like this is like the best possible outcome. Like if you're playing it with developer tools, I think as someone who, like I said, I was kind of lukewarm in the original game. I thought it was good, not great. Like it seems like a weird thing to be excited about, but I'm like, man, like the underwater segments look fantastic. Like
Yeah,
I have
they
no
do.
idea how it
Yeah.
will play, but it just looks really vibrant, really neat, and that obviously kind of gives you a lot of opportunity for like puzzling or verticality or even like combat where you could stealth approach an enemy camp from the water or something like that, or then also like aquatic monsters. You already kind of have like the alligator type things. Like I'm trying to imagining like fighting those things underwater.
Cool, yeah.
So.
I forgot, like that's one of the big draws of Horizon is all the roboty things. For like, I completely forgot. There's like showed quite a few new ones here, and they all look great as well. Yeah, definitely one to look out for. I will become more excited as it approaches, but I'm trying to like calm myself down a bit with games that feel like a long way off. Like I suffered Kingdom Hearts 3 fever for like a long time, so I wait till the year.
You're still winding down from that.
I still am, yeah. It'll be the same when 4 gets announced, but Horizon looks great, but it's not going to be here for a while.
So just to tail off this discussion, George already mentioned this, but yeah, one of my biggest takeaways was the grapple hook and the glider. I forget what their in-universe names are, but the original Horizon Zero Dawn, it didn't have a lot in terms of like the exploration besides just kind of running around and like bunny hopping and some climbing. So I'm hoping that'll, those sorts of things will make kind of getting around up and down ledges and verticality a bit nicer. I obviously up with the grapple hook and down with the glider. And so you're not just falling to your death. And then also the original game, one of its biggest weaknesses was its melee combat. It was just very awkward. You had like a heavy attack and a light attack, but they didn't really chain together in any way. It just kind of felt sloppy, and it was really hard to do anything useful with melee. It was almost better just to run and use your bow again. And it's hard to tell without playing it for yourself, but they showed a little bit here where Aloy was actually able to like string a few attacks together. Even did a thing where she sort of jumped off the enemy and went back to using her bow. And then of course we have that fighting game super that kind of got into the mix as well. So
she's the newest Guilty Gear character.
It's like I said, it's hard to know how this will actually play until you get a controller in your hands. But it seems like they are at least going to attempt to tweak it. Like they realize this is something we need to improve. So hopefully they can achieve that.
Yeah, I think the thing that really stuck out to me, like from the offset, was like the really, really big bump up in facial animations for that game.
Yes, yeah.
It's pretty impressive the strides they've made on that. I think the thing that kind of bothered me, I know it's still in development, but hopefully they'll tweak it. Is that like I don't remember how it was in the original Zero Dawn, but I don't remember this effect being too prominent of like this like hero light on Aloy, like she's like glowing in some of the scenes of that showcase, like in comparison to the background and when you're moving around. So I kind of hope they toned that effect down a little bit because to me it felt it felt off, like where like she's like it looks like she was like in some ethereal plane compared to like the rest of her environment. It's like, oh, okay, well, like I understand like it should pops out more, and maybe it's like it's a visual thing where since like the environments are so densely like visually rich now that like they felt the need to like make her pop out more.
It's accessibility.
Yeah, well,
Well, I like how you mentioned the facial animations. I don't have like the technical know-how to say this, but it does feel like they kind of made a deliberate decision with the art style to make it slightly more like artistic and cartoony is not the right word, but it seems like they're not shooting for photorealism. They're shooting for something that matches with like the vibrancy of the environment. So it's like deliberately just focused on that. And this is something that you actually kind of saw in a little bit in like Infamous Second Son, or also like Last of Us Part 1. I think Part 2 they did end up going more photorealistic, less realistic way. I know that sounds so dumb. I'm just trying to
Wait, what do
avoid
you
using the
mean?
word.
No, I know. Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah.
I'm trying to avoid using the word cartoony because that has like a connotation to it that I'm not trying to portray. It seems like they're deliberately like having like an artistic representation of what these characters look like that matches with the incredible vibrancy of the environment. Does that make sense? I feel like it's,
I know what you mean.
Looks
No, I know what you
very
mean.
smartly. It feels very smartly like composted together. Maybe I should have switched these two around and talked about this one first. But we got another strategy RPG announcement from publisher Kadokawa Games that we had brought up in the Metal Mech section. Mecha strategy RPG Relayer announced launching for PlayStation 5 and 4 this year. So this is very much a Josh Torres game. What do you see in Relayer?
yeah, this is the new game from God War's development team over at Kadokawa. Adam has played that, and I don't think you were too hot on it, so I'm kind of crossing my fingers.
Let me just say that I played the original version of God Wars on PS4, and I just thought it was average. It had a good class system, but like everything else, I thought was just kind of half baked. But they re-released the game, they added content to it, and they tweaked it quite significantly afterwards. So like I played the worst version of it, and there's some significant tweaks in terms of even like how many people you can bring into a battle and things like that. So
Okay.
it's like my take on it is almost outdated because they updated it so much. But we'll see.
Yeah. So they described this as like a space opera strategy RPG. It was like, okay, that's weird. And then it started making sense as they're showing all these characters and factions. Like even on their official site, they already have like all these organizations and how each character relates to one another and like how the organization structure works in this universe. It's really aiming for a grand scope, which really ticks my boxes because I'm a big Legend of Galactic Heroes fan. Arguably, like my favorite like anime show ever. Like that space opera right there. And
The Yang Gang.
hey man, um, and they showed a trailer of this, and it's very evocative of Super Robot Wars in terms of like, obviously the mechas moving on this strategy grid, but there's like fully 3D modeled environments, and when they go into like battles with one another, the thing that I think of is the Super Robot Wars like Maso Kishin Lord of Elemental games on the PSP and Vita, where they're not chibified. They're like full scale robots that are all 3D modeled, and they kind of clash against each other on that turn and whatnot with like hit chances and what weapon to use and whatnot. So that there's they kind of released some story bits of um this game where they're saying that humanity's not alone in this universe. They meet this intelligent life form called the Relayers, and then there's some sort of alien civilization going on, and then so they go a detail like, oh, there's these star children. They're like humans bestowed with unique powers, and then I guess they can pilot these mechs and whatnot. So there's a lot of that going on. They're promising like there's like a lot of stages, like 80 plus stages, and I really wonder how like this character relationships are in this game, because they seem to really be honing in like, oh, like these characters like really like to interact with one another, and I don't know, it's
Sounds interesting.
it sounds really interesting. And I think the weird thing that Kite, one of our news writers on the site, and I were talking about when they first released the key visual for this game as the cover of this week's Famitsu article, the one that just came out, was there's like these two robots, like this red one and then like kind of this like grayish silver
White, black.
one. Yeah,
It's like New Gundam versus Sasabi, right?
Exactly.
That's the first thing I look at.
Yeah, like it's very evocative of the Char's counterattack, like the New versus Zazabi Gundams like clashing against each other. It's like if you did it like if you just kind of like strolled by that without like really paying attention to it, like you would just assume it's like, oh, it's just another artwork of like Sazabi and New, like swords pressing against each other. It just that was a weird kind of like way to advertise the game, but I kind of dig it. I'm not entirely like sold on the mech designs yet. They're very blocky and sectioned off, like the way they kind of show like in the full body works. But I could grow to like them in time, and then a lot of the character designs seem pretty cool. But they're planning this as like a simultaneous worldwide release as well, which is really cool. It's going to support English and Japanese voiceovers, and the interesting thing about this is going to be distributed by Clouded Leopard Entertainment, who are the ones responsible for all like the Chinese and Asian releases of the Trails series as well. So I wonder if they're also going to be distributing the Western version of this game, or if it's just going to be kind of, I don't know who to distribute. Does Kadokawa Games rely on?
Usually it's NIS America, but like as we saw, Metal Max Xeno Reborn, that's P-Cube now for some reason.
Oh right, yeah.
But usually in the past it's always been NIS, but we'll see.
We'll see, yeah. But I'm really looking forward to it. They released the first trailer. Everything's up on the site. I think Kite has it put it up, and it's I want to hear more. I want to know more. I am very down to try this game out. We don't get a lot of these types of games anymore.
And again, that's Relayer, a tactical
Is that
RPG.
supposed to be this year?
Yeah.
This year, and they say plans for worldwide release. So we've been hearing that a lot this week. So lots of reasons to be excited. And then we got a kind of a surprise announcement of a new game, even though it seems like maybe it was unintended. We've been talking a little bit over the last couple months about, fiscal year results, usually in the terms of sales. The target this time is publisher 505 Games, more specifically their parent company, Digital Bros. They had an corporate overview presentation going over the recent fiscal year. Specifically, we're going to zero in on a slide talking about the 2019 release of Bloodstained Ritual of the Night. And this sounds a bit weird because I don't know why it ended up this way, but on this they talk about its Metacritic score, its revenue, but also it had a sixth bullet point on there saying second version in development. So on this corporate overview presentation on the slide for Bloodstained Ritual of the Night, talking about basically announcing a sequel. Then, when this was noticed and called out and shared, a second version of this presentation was uploaded with that bullet. No changes except that bullet was removed. So it seems like someone fired it off too early or didn't realize that it wasn't formally announced. Very weird.
This is also speculation, but like Kotaku actually reached out and basically said like, hey, what's up? And what 505 replied was, we have no comment. And this is one of those things where it's like, if it was just like an error, like, oh, that was supposed to go on the Ghost Runner slide because Ghost Runner is getting a second version. They would just say that was a mistake. But the fact that they said no comment, almost like in a way, sort of
like confirmation.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't, but it sort of does.
I'd be down. Bloodstained is a hell of a game. Really enjoyed it.
It's pretty good.
I'm down for more. There's definitely some improvements they can make, and I think that if they play their cards right, it could be really, really good.
Yeah, this is like the classic use of the all but confirmed. It's like it's not confirmed, but pretty much. Not unless they give a more definitive statement about why it was on the slide and then why it was removed, which seems like almost like admission at that point. But yeah, Bloodstained Ritual of the Night seems to have a sequel in development, which I guess in itself isn't that surprising, but it's kind of cool to see it in a corporate presentation.
I guess continues to make not Castlevania games, so I'm all for it.
We did get a couple new release dates for already announced games. Very short press release from the Pokemon Company about their 2 upcoming releases, Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl, along with Pokemon Legends Arceus. I asked how that was pronounced when that was announced, and I forget what it was, so I'm just going to say Arceus.
Arceus, Arceus, tomato.
Yes. Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl is set to release on November 19th, which is kind of like the weekend that all Pokemon games release in November, I feel like.
Yep.
So maybe not a surprise, but those games will be releasing in the 3rd week of November.
I just realized I'm going to have to juggle that and Endwalker. Oh no.
Yeah, they release on the same day, right?
I did see some people like snidely saying like, good luck, Pokemon. I'm going to be playing the Endwalker early access on November 19th. But it's like, it's not like there's a time limit that you can play Pokemon in July the year after and no one's going to stop you.
So Pokemon's bigger than Final Fantasy.
You can play Pokemon, James, so I can catch up on that Walker.
But yeah, there was no really other details about the re-release. A few more screenshots. No, not even any new screenshots, just the box arts, which I think are actually really quite terrible. They look like that late 2000s, like early CG.
Like it's like a CG render placed it on
with like and they're like it just looks really bad. It looks like a Pokemon card art, like the weird art style that they use on the Pokemon like booster card packs, only on the video game box art.
I don't know, like Pokemon box art never stand out for me. It's usually just like the legendary Pokemon in a pretty lousy background.
You're not wrong.
That's true.
I think the last time that there was an actually really good Pokemon box art was probably Heart Gold and Soul Silver. And even then was still just legendary on the box. It just the background for it was more interesting, I'd say.
Well, I guess on that note, we did also get a release date for Pokemon Legends Arceus. This is the like open world, more actiony type of game that was announced in the February Pokemon Presents stream. It is releasing on
February. Oh my god.
Yeah, forever ago. January 28th, 2022 is when Pokemon Legends Arceus is releasing. And it also got its box art, and it is a bit better. It's still kind of like generic, but like just compared to like its competition within its series, it looks really good. It's just a shot of a bunch of the Pokemon. Like we already kind of know that this is using like an amalgamation of different starters. Like it's got Cyndaquil and Oshawott, and what's the other one? What's that owl? The grass type owl from Gen 7.
Oh, I don't know. James, what's they called?
Gen 7
Rowlet?
was the one.
Rowlet.
Yeah, Rowlet.
Yes.
Yeah.
We all knew.
Yeah.
Obviously. I think nobody really expected Pokemon Legends to come out this soon because they said 2022, and people probably assumed that
holiday.
It's going to be the 2020. Yeah, it's going to be holiday 2022. There's a lot of time for it to like get extra development, especially since this does make me a bit more worried about it. Because I feel like a lot of people saw that original like kind of review and it's like, oh, this looks pretty rough, but they said 2022, so that means that they have a lot of time to work on it. But if it's coming out in January 2022, that's a little bit different. So
yeah, there was
that reveal trailer was like pretty rough.
That's why you better all start praying those Switch Pro rumors are true.
Yeah. As of the time of recording, there is no concrete details.
Much like Nihon
Pro stuff. Go ahead, James.
Much like Nihon Falcom needed the PlayStation 5 to fix East 9, surely we'll need the Switch Pro to fix Pokemon Legends Arceus.
What if that's not enough?
God, I can't wait. I can't wait for it though. Like I know it did look rough. It looked really rough, but the idea of it is exactly.
George, you
what
gotta
I want.
calm down. Biomutant's gonna happen again if you do this.
I know. I'm so sorry. But it looks cool. It looks cool. It's like I am base Pokemon fan. Like I'm so like Gen 1, Gen 2 were peak when they probably weren't gameplay wise. But yeah, I'm super excited for this. Wait, no, I'm mildly excited. Hopefully it's good.
I am tempered expectations for this game.
Yes, that.
But yeah, we got the box arts, we got the release dates, not a lot of other details. But yeah. During his section earlier in the podcast, Josh did kind of allude to this. We also had, surprise, another event, streaming event from earlier this week, and that was the Monster Hunter May 2021 digital event, mainly going over Title Update 3 for Monster Hunter Rise. Basically, this was kind of the major update that added, extended the story of the base game, which was originally kind of cut short. The update was headlined by the addition of 2 new monsters, Crimson Glow, I can't say this, tongue twister, Crimson Glow Valstrax and Apex Zinogre. So I haven't played a Monster Hunter game that has Valstrax, but apparently he was like a flagship from an earlier title.
Yeah, this is from Generations. I want to. Was it Generations? I forgot. what
Generations
flagship
Ultimate.
was.
Yeah.
There we go. Yeah. So, yeah, I've been kind of pecking away at this new update. I think the new content starts at HR 50, but I was already like HR 79 or something. So I don't know. This is a weird update because this feels like relatively less content than the update 2.0. Update 2.0 had Chameleos, the Teostra, Kushala. Yep. And it opened up some of the Apex fights to normal fights like Apex Arceus and Apex Mizutsune. This one, right away you get like the final like story quest, and I was really underwhelmed, I guess, with the way it happened because they lead it off with like a big cliffhanger at the end of that story, and then this was just like, all right, go kill like the final bosses, and then like there's like a final cutscene like, you did it, good job. Thumbs up, everyone. Let's go eat, and then that's it. And it's like, and it's just literally one new story quest, which is the final boss. And like the fight itself was very reminiscent of like these other fights that you already had with Ibushi. Oh, Ibushi was only Rampage, I think, so you got to fight Ibushi normally, and then Narwa has like this all mother form after you take down Ibushi, and that actually has like a new move set and has like some cool moves associated with it. But like the pace of the fight and the way you handle it is still largely similar to how you fought it with the first final boss of the game, like when it was still the final boss. So like there are moments in it that are cool that I won't spoil, but overall it's kind of it felt underwhelming in the grand scheme of things, especially with the way like that cliffhanger left players off of. And then after that, your next goal is to get the HR 100, which I'm trying to get, which is for the Valstrax fight, which I need to get to. I want to really play that because that's supposed to be like, the big final monster at the moment, and a lot of people seem to be dying to it because it's actually a piece of challenging content for the game at long last. So I'm interested to see how that fight goes. It's interesting because they only added this variant, this Crimson Glow Valstrax, not base Valstrax. So I can't think of many monsters throughout the series where they only added their variants, not their base monster, to it. Also, they added an Apex Rathalos fight, both in. I think Apex Rathalos was in the last update, but you can fight it in a normal fight now, which is pretty challenging for a lot of players. It hits really hard, and you can fight Apex Zinogre. I think much later on normally, but Apex Zinogre was unlocked for me in Rampage, so I only fought it in Rampage so far. So I assume that'll unlock after Valstrax or whatever. But there hasn't been really any substantial changes outside of those few fights. There's like no like secret monster as I've heard of like with the Betelgeuse surprise in the last Monster Hunter update. So I'll keep working away at it, but it's definitely for me at the moment with the roadmap that they provided, it looks so
Yeah,
bare
I was
bones.
actually
Like
going
I
to
don't
comment on
know.
that. The roadmap is very thin, which I guess is fine, but it's just like I'm not even sure why you'd even share it in this format. The roadmap basically shows the that basically starting in June there will be a collab event followed by DLC and event quests, followed by a collab event, followed by DLC and event quests. That's basically like the roadmap.
I'm honestly,
that collab event is just like with stories too, and that's
Yeah.
like for like an I don't know what item, but it's like whatever.
you know what I'm thinking of?
What's
I'm
up?
honestly not sure now if the reason why the updates happened the way they did was because of COVID, or
Probably.
if the Rise team decided, well, we need to have additional monsters like World did, so let's cut out monsters from the base game and just bring them in over the first couple of months to have the illusion of longer running support with additional monsters.
I
Because
I think it's probably like a little bit of both. Both can be true, right? Because
Yeah.
COVID, we're now feeling the full effects of COVID in game development. Like, last year, like that was just like things that were already were already ongoing and were like already
Yeah.
set to release and ready to go. Now we're really in the thick of it of like, oh shit, we're still in these conditions and like these either working from home or remote conditions or maybe like a hybrid condition. It's like things are still in flux and things are way more unsure than they ever were now because the projects are like starting to like ramp up within these times. So working around that and working through development fully within this new normal is
Yeah,
now
the
kind of in a
projects
weird
that were at the heart of their development and squarely in the middle of the pandemic at its peak.
Yeah. So that's why, like, for a lot of like release dates that we share on this podcast and any release dates that you see now for ongoing games, like, I really don't believe in a release date right now until I actually see it downloading or like playing in front of me, or like I see like someone I know play it, and it's like, okay, this game exists and it's fully playable. Like, other than that, these release dates right now are just like, I don't know if you say so, if you can make this, but there's a reason why like so many delay announcements have been made for a lot of projects this year alone because no one really knows. No one really knows how it's gonna go until rubber
Yeah, I
meets
don't
the
want to
road.
say like, how dare they show this thin roadmap, but I'm just saying like, couldn't they just have avoided this and just saying like, yeah, we got a stories collab coming up and we've got more planned for the future, and just kind of leave it at that, or like the DLC quests or the event quests that they have listed, just like kind of drop them in with like a very short head, like, oh, we've added an event quest where you fight a giant Rajang. It's like Rajang, only he's 3 stories tall, or something. Whatever they end up doing, they do silly stuff like that. At least they did for World.
Yeah.
Like I just would have avoided presenting it like a roadmap to be criticized in the first place. I guess is what I would have done.
Right. Yeah.
Me, the dumb consumer that
Yeah,
has never
I-
worked
I
on the
don't-
other side, but
Yeah, I agree with that because that like when you compare that roadmap to like an Iceborne
yeah,
roadmap,
exactly.
it's like, oh fuck.
Yeah.
So it's still fun, and I'm really curious to see how Valstrax is now. My
Yeah.
my good jet engine dragon.
I want to stress though that there's nothing wrong with the content that's in the game now. Like my main problem was just with what was there at launch because it definitely felt like there was stuff missing, and it sounds like that now that's there. And honestly, not every Monster Hunter has to be like they didn't call it a games as a service, but World basically was by the end of it. But I don't know.
The one hope I have now is they do have a Gore Magala skeleton now with Valstrax being in the game. So come on, Capcom. What are we doing? Where's Gore
Event
Magala?
quests, they're coming up.
What But yeah, like if they add more monsters, like I'll keep coming back to this game throughout the year as they add more stuff, and like I'm in it for the long haul now.
Also coming out of this Monster Hunter stream event, they did have a new trailer for Stories 2. It's at this point, I'm kind of like, I'm just waiting for launch at that point. It was like another 2 minutes of just some cutscenes and some. I think they opened the streaming event with
There's
it.
genetic engineering
Go
now.
ahead, say that again.
There's genetic engineering now in it. You can breed your monsters and like do match 3 with their traits, and then you can have like monsters that inherit like different elemental attacks that they weren't meant to through
That was
genetic
in the
engineering.
that was in the first game.
I don't remember that one. So
One of the very first things you're told about, like really early on, is you're given a Lagombi. It's like, hey, mess around using traits so it can breathe fire.
that was like 20 years ago, man. You're
Yeah.
asking me a lot to remember that.
And then a few days after the streaming, or maybe the day after, we did also learn that Monster Hunter Rise has passed the 7 million sales unit mark, which at this point is like, what is there to say? It's outsold their expectations. I think they expected like 5-6 million lifetime, and now they're at 7 million in 2 months. Insane to see like what the potential of this game is in terms of sales volume, especially considering that a PC release is all but confirmed, and probably other consoles. So it'll be interesting to see like where does it stack up to World. At some point, it seemed unreachable that it could ever reach World's highs, and now it's a little less certain. I feel like, but obviously, it's done really well.
I hope they do that Witcher 3 thing where you can like transfer your save data from like the Switch version to the PC version and vice versa. Because I don't want to start all over with Rise.
They never did for World, so missed opportunity there.
But
then again,
It sounds like that might have been down to Sony, because apparently there was like issues with Destiny 2 where basically Bungie had to all but blackmail Sony to let them do that for it. So could have been something like that. I feel like there's a decent chance for Rise, if only because there are like multiple instances of it happening between obviously The Witcher, but also like Divinity Original
Civ
Sin
as well,
2 and Hades.
Right?
Yeah, Civ. So I mean, I think there wouldn't be any. Well, it depends on if there's any like Nintendo collaborations. If there's Nintendo collaborations, that might be something
once you hear
different.
a Monster Hunter
If
like
there-
a direct update or something streamed, and they mentioned Mario, it's all over. The dream's dead.
Yeah, if there's no Nintendo collaborations, which I'm sure like a lot of Switch owners would actually like them. No, I play on PC too. Please keep them away from me. I want the dream to stay alive.
No Mario and Monster Hunter.
We have progressed past the need of Mario.
well, he's dead now, right?
That's the
Yeah.
podcast title, by the way. That's the podcast title.
A couple other release dates to talk about. This one is a game we brought up a few weeks ago on the podcast. The Legend of Heroes, Kuro no Kiseki, the newest entry in the Kiseki/Trail series, now has a release date. It is releasing in Japan. That is no English announcement at all still. Is Japan on September 30th. And from the last time we talked about it, they did introduce the last 2 playable characters out of that main cast of 8 that they teased from the outset. The last time we talked about it, we introduced Reset and Quatra, whatever it is. This week, they've announced Judith Ranster, who is a 22-year-old actress, and then Burgard Zeman, who is the 69-year-old martial artist. So he was the one when they only showed the ages. It was like 21, 25, 22, 69. So you got your classic JRPG like mentor character, I presume, in the cast with Burgard. Not much to say. They both look really cool. We got some new artworks from all the characters with the Katsumi Inami art, which looks great, as always.
I'll definitely say from the bits and pieces we're seeing of Kuro, it's definitely off to a better start than Cold Steel ever had, I feel like. At least in regards to the tone.
I'm a little bit burned out with Cold Steel, but I feel like I might give this game, I might play it on launch. The voice cast is like very top tier for this. They got like the big stars.
Yeah,
The
dude,
Japanese cast, yeah.
But Chow, if you're gonna play Kuro and maybe make a guide, you need to play Hajimari and make a guide for it first. You
No,
can't end your
I-
streak. You can't let the streak die.
I already skipped 0 and made a Trails of Azure guide.
I was actually just about to mention it's almost kind of a bummer where it's like, I'm getting kind of excited for Kuro. I want to play it, but there's still this Hajimari thing that I kind of
not
don't
only
wanna
that,
play
but
in
so
the
I
way.
played Trails from Zero a month ago, and I'm getting ready to play the new fan translation for Azure. And in some of I forget if it was Famitsu or another magazine, but they released some more just screenshots from the game, and it has characters that were introduced, I believe. Maybe they are prominent characters in the Crossbell games. I'm talking about Kilika and CAO. And it's like, oh, so is this really going to be? It makes sense because those characters are Calvardian, which is where this game takes place. But it really seems like this isn't going to be like it's safe to jump in here without a few caveats.
Well, Kilika was introduced in
Yeah,
Sky, right?
she was
Yeah, this is the very
introduced
first
as
game.
Zin's friend. But yeah,
She talks to Zin a lot.
yeah. So I don't want to say that. I guess
Not to mention based off stuff in the third, there's another character that'll probably show
Yeah.
up. Well,
Yeah,
there's a few characters
Jack
from
and Hale from the third.
well,
Yeah.
Richard for one, probably. Because he's in Calvert at the moment, I think. So
yeah, it seems like anyone hoping that this is going to be a clean start probably won't be. It'll be to some extent just inherently, but I remember when I first played. Well, remember as if it was long ago when I first played Zero. Even though it was a new protagonist and new location, it kind of tethers directly to what preceded it in Trails in the Sky Third. Also, it seems like really only Cold Steel 1 had that. Even that like facade of being like a fresh start, and that didn't last for very long. So it seems like just status quo, these games all tail together. That's the way they should probably be enjoyed, even though with the state of English releases, that's very difficult. So same as it ever was, I guess. Nothing's changed on that paradigm.
I don't know. I think it's pretty hard to try to sell overarching series. It's like, oh yeah, it's like you want to play this new RPG game? Can you play like the 5 games before this before you can get like a rush idea what to go
for this now.
Kingdom
We're
Hearts.
literally at go play these 10 games. They're all like 40 plus hours. Good luck.
It's also
and then
it's
Cold
also
Steel
like,
3 and 4 are like 100 hours, and Hajimari's like 70.
I think there's there's also Yakuza sort of running into this problem, I guess, right?
Yakuza games
I mean,
are much
7 was
shorter
the
games.
So I'm just sort of imagining like you're selling this game. It's marketed largely, to teens, whatever. That's like your main player base, right? And like a lot of these, kids who are like going to be 15, 16, 17, maybe early 20s, it's like, oh wait, in order for me to really understand this Kuro no Kiseki game that I want to play, I have to play this Trails in the Sky game from like 20 years ago. Like you might run into a problem if you're not careful. Like you're restricting your audience to only people who have like really played all these games. So
there is a certain sort of like resonance that you get from having all that invested time and build up and relationships that they've experienced. I'm not saying like how dare you
Though
throw
it can
that away.
backfire.
It's just that at some point you're also bringing up with it the level of hurdle that you have to clear to meet any sort of enjoyment. So they kind of come up together.
And then it can become baggage, like with me and Cold Steel 4.
Yeah, and like when you think about like sales numbers over time too, like there's only gonna be like a downward trend at a certain point where like only a certain amount of players are gonna come back and back and back and back.
And it certainly doesn't help that Falcom's stubborn and refuses to release their games on Switch when that's where the market is for the types of games that Falcom is making. That's where the market is. So I don't know.
Yeah.
But it's actually funny because just the other day I was at a local game store and a dude came in wearing a Trails of Cold Steel sweatshirt, and he was like getting into the series and he was kind of lamenting the fact. No, do I live in Canada?
I don't know. Do you?
I do have some Trails of Cold Steel t-shirts.
Oh God, I wish. But basically he started with Trails of Cold Steel 1, and then he like after he finished it, he was like, oh, what's else in this series? And he's like, oh shit, there's Trails in the Sky and the Crossbell games. And it's like, even if they're saying, oh, you can start with Cold Steel, it's obvious that I'd be missing a lot if I didn't play these. So he went back and he's starting Trails in the Sky, and it's like he's like overwhelmed because it's like, oh my God, there's so many games.
How many people are gonna make that decision to like, I'm going to really invest in this?
You had like that weird awkward thing when Nice America took up the license for it from Xseed, and it's like, oh, you can start with Cold Steel 3. We swear Cold Steel 3 a perfect jumping on point.
Yeah.
Perfect starting game. It's like, all right, say so. And then they even had like Kondo out there marking. It's like, yeah, go jump into Cold Steel 3. It's
I can't believe he got the guts to say that. But what he's gonna say? Don't buy our game until you beat these.
It was the
games
funniest
first.
thing, I swear.
Well, you just have to be careful, basically, if you're Kondo and the developers. It's like I get why people who are already invested like a long-running series and a long-running story and returning characters, but
I can't wait.
yeah, like what James said, the hurdle is just going to get bigger and
I can't
bigger
wait
and
for the
bigger.
Hajimari localization. They're like, yeah, you can jump into Hajimari, guys. It's okay.
Yeah,
I
just start
mean-
with this one.
I mean, especially if they go Trails of the Origin or Trails from Beginning, it's like,
Yeah.
look, it's right there in the title.
Eh. I will say though that I am on this train. Like I do plan to play Azure within the next couple months, and the reason why I paused to play Zero and Azure was so that I could go into Cold Steel 4 like with all the knowledge that I quote unquote should have, and then maybe we'll get the announcement of a Hajimari localization before the end of the summer within somewhere nested in all this E3-ish stuff. Maybe, who knows? All right, like even though we just criticized like how this is kind of frustrating, like I'm totally like, well, if that's how it is, that's how it will be. I guess you've laid this road for me. I'll follow it. And now that we're lucky enough to have the dedicated people over at GeoFront giving us an English option. So
As always, just full disclosure, more than a couple of us at RPG site here are friends with people in the GeoFront team. Chow and I are very close friends with many of the GeoFront people, and we've both actually helped test the Zero fan translation at least a bit.
I am not
just
I
full
am not
disclosure
friends with
there.
any of them. I don't have any friends. So all of my
You know
my
what's
opinions are
hilarious,
unbiased.
though?
You can count on that.
You know what's hilarious though? I wrote some mistakes in my guide with some wrong data table, and people have been pinging GeoFront. It's like, is this a bug with your game?
You can't be wrong,
Like,
Chow. Okay, everything you write in a guide is fucking law. If you're wrong, then we don't know what to actually do.
Wait a second. You said you didn't do a Zero guide.
Oh, no, this is Azure. I'm talking about Azure in all. And they're actually like already pinging like their head lead. It's like, is this a bug in your game? Because these data tables don't match up.
Oh man.
Because Chow would never lie to us.
I mean, I hope we get a Hajimari announcement for English from East America before the end of the year. That would be cool because it would know that we're still on. Like, because if we lose a year, then we just like that gap between where the official releases are and where the English releases are will just start widening again. I'm like, I hope we at least keep pace. Is kind of like where I'm at.
Yeah, I do wonder. Chow mentioned it a little bit earlier. There's like such big Japanese voice actors and actresses on this Kuro no Kiseki game. Like I do wonder how many scenes will be voiced, because I imagine the budget for them can't be cheap. Like you have Daisuke Ono voicing the main character, and he's Jotaro from JoJo, Miku Ito as Agnes, and she's Kokoro from Princess Connect. You have 2B's voice actress Yui Ishikawa as Rosette, which is a funny, I think Rosette's like,
2B.
yeah, Rosette's basically 2B. And then Judith as Yoko Hikasa. There's really big voice actors and actresses on this project, so it's exciting. That lineup is fire, but we'll see. I mean, how much is actually voiced?
One of the funniest things I see was there was a stream with like Falcom recently. They said that it's like, well, I think there's too much story to be told. I don't think we can self-contain this in one game.
Yeah,
The bargaining
they're
has
already
already begun.
please let it be one game. What are you doing? So we're fucked, dude. We're totally fucked. This is gonna be another 20 games.
I've long since accepted that by the time the series is over, it's going to be an over 1,000 hour story, because we're close already. We're gonna get there.
It gets good at the 900 hour mark, man. Don't worry. Just stick with it. Okay, George?
Just ignore that dip in quality at the
Yeah,
600,
I'm on
700
board.
hour mark with Cold Steel 4. Just patch right through it.
Here's a Chow Focus update. We've got a new major patch for Genshin Impact. Genshin Impact version 1.6 launches on June 9th. It adds the character Kazuha, summer outfits like swimsuits, and a few other things. Are you looking forward to this, Chow?
I'm looking forward to skins.
What does that mean?
Like, I don't know. I always play mobile games and MMOs for the glamour, so I always go
Well,
for
what
that
skins are we
first, right?
talking about here?
we got a new skin for Barbara and Jean. The two sisters got a new summer outfit because they're gonna go for a summer island for vacation for this patch update.
Are they like doing any like gameplay changes in this new content? Like this
I don't think there's big changes, but if you're like been following the leaks, everything that's going on here is actually pretty much spot on what people found before. Like you got all this was it introduction to Izuna Sama or whatever that place is called? Yeah, they got Beto, which people announced that she's gonna introduce you to this new region, and this patch I think is just trying to set up things for the new region to come in 1.7.
By the way, the title of 1.6 is Midsummer Island Adventure. So it is kind of treated like a vacation side story or something.
Yeah, and it's most of mini games a lot. I mean, they get a boat and all this
so there are
kind of
like
other
new
stuff.
like mini games and like so you're actually doing like different stuff than just like the usual.
Yeah, but I think what people are looking more forward to is perhaps the 1.7 patch because that's when Ayaka is supposed to come out, probably, right? Because at the end of this patch live stream, she's introducing you to the new region and what you can find in the new region,
I mean,
right?
you're the one who knows Genshin. I don't know.
Well, I'm just trying to give you a rough brief.
You're right. I'm like, I guess.
But,
sure. I'm just kidding. I'm fucking with you.
So Chow would be able to talk about this more than I could, but as I understand it, the new outfits for Jean and Barbara, they're not really given to you. It's more that they are now available to be. But one of them, I saw something like one of them is like $30 for an outfit. Is that right? That seems like a lot.
$30 isn't exactly accurate. It's more like it costs 1980 gems, I think, and apparently for first dippers you get a discount, which is at 1,300 gems. You gotta look at the gems in a ratio kind of thing. Like I think you look at, like the more you buy, the cheaper it is because you get like this double.
What is the cheapest price if I have 0 gems? What is the cheapest price I can get this skin?
I think at least $20 right now with the discount. Without the discount, I think Adam's right, about $30.
That's how you make this money, right? You just sell swimsuits for $20-$30.
Okay,
and people will buy them.
With the primo gems, like, does it have to be paid primo gems, or can you do?
Yes, it has to be paid gems. It has to be those Genesis crystals. So you gotta pay for that. You can't cheat your way out with free primo gems.
All right, then yeah, they want their money, and they're like, hey, this game is free to play, but if you want these skins.
Like every game has a different structure with selling skins. Like Grand Blue sells skins too. How they work is they would sell you a 10-roll ticket and the skin. So you're technically paying for 10 rolls, which is the exact same price, and you get the skin for free.
But this one you don't get a 10 roll. Like you just
buy a skin and you don't get free rolls.
Like, I think this is a common practice with any like free to play in Fortnite, X Legend,
and and if you're playing something like Azure Lane, I think that's where skins are really cheap. But like, I guess their approach is more like we give you the units that are easy to get, so you would buy the skin, and that's
you're also gonna get arrested by the
model,
FBI
right?
because you booted up Azure Lane.
Well, it depends on what you're looking at, right?
I don't know.
I'm just using different business model to compare what.
Like MMOs like sell mount skins for $20-$25 sometimes, so it's not like unheard of.
Or over 30 if you're like me and whale for a whale.
Oh yeah, the Lunam whale melt, right?
Are you looking forward to so you're looking forward to the 1.7 update? Is there like any time frame they gave for that?
Well, usually a good way to tell you when the new patch comes out is when your battle pass is going to expire. That's basically it. You look at it, it says, oh, this battle pass got 50 days to unlock all this crap. And once you pass those 50 days, it's like, well, that's when the new patch hits usually.
All right.
But yeah, that's basically it for Genshin 1.6.
Are you going to roll for the new character?
No, I'm skipping. No dudes, man. No dudes.
Are you waiting for Ayaka? Is Ayaka free, or is she going to be roll, or do we know yet?
Of course she won't be free. I mean, this is like
I don't know, man. Like they gave you some free characters in that game early on.
Yeah, but it's like Oh no, like remember when the game first came out, there's like Hangyaku is given for free to 1.2 players. It's like
Dude.
that leak was
Dude, yeah,
completely
like they're
shot
so
down.
far. Like I was actually looking forward to that leak being true because like that's when I was still playing Genshin, and like we're now fucking in May of the next year, and still no. It's a good thing. Look. I'm just saying it's a good thing I'm done at that game because if I was still playing at Yakuza around the corner, I would. I don't. I would probably
Your
pay
wallet would hurt.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Happy birthday, Sorihami. It's Sorihami's birthday today. That's the voice actor for Ayaka.
Yeah.
So happy birthday.
Hyman's gonna drive Josh broke
Oh.
if he was still playing.
I'm so happy I'm not playing that game anymore.
2 tiny last minute footnotes here. We did also in the last week have a Sonic event that we talked about.
Woo!
Not really anything. Not really anything there on
What?
the RPG front, except
Actually,
actually,
there was leaks that's there were leaks that Sonic Rangers is the teased new Sonic Team game, not announced but leaked and like rumored, with some substantiating evidence, but also like the leaks imply that there's things like an open world and skill trees.
that's all you need to be an RPG.
Oh no!
Shotgun bags.
All right, yeah, I already see George putting his name down in the review doc for this leak. He's like signing up for Sonic Rangers.
Are you laughing? Okay, to be clear, I guess the metadata for the trailer that released, like the teaser, still has like Sonic Rangers listed as like a title, even though that title was not announced. And then there was like a Reddit or 4chan or something, I forget which exactly, leak from
was
like
4chan.
months ago. Yeah, 4chan that also used Sonic Rangers, and saying that they were a tester and they said all the things they saw. So it's like the substantiating evidence is that this metadata title and this leak title that came out earlier are the same. So it's like, maybe there's something there. We don't know.
Plus, there's other
maybe.
little aspects of like the teaser that do seem to line up with. Well, obviously, once you think, oh, there might be something here, you look at the rest of it, and it's like, oh, maybe this connects to what he was saying. But there was like a thing about how there's like cyberspace, like special levels, and like there's like the kind of like glitch blocks in the boost or whatnot. And then there was like one thing about tracing like a circle, and you see that with like the light, and it's like it's 4chan. Take it with not just a grain of salt, but the whole shaker. But there have been moments where the rumors have been real, the leaks have been real, and this one definitely seems like it at least has some smoke to it. If there's a fire, we'll have to wait to see. But again, I don't know why we're even talking about Sonic.
I heard that Sonic's gonna go like it's morphin time. It's gonna be go Sonic Rangers.
No.
Yes, of course.
Been nonsense until they officially announced the name.
It's like, what the fuck is this? This okay, there's not an actual like you can't go down this rabbit hole. We already did, but we have to stop. Why is Sonic here?
Well, early on, before the Sonic Rangers tease at the end and all the leak stuff that followed it, they were showing off basically Sonic collabs and a bunch of other Sega properties like 2 Point Hospital and a few other things, including the upcoming announced Lost Judgment game from RGG Studios. So Sonic the Fighters will be a playable arcade game within Lost Judgment. That's his cameo there.
Heck yeah.
So,
I'm gonna say, I never knew that the Sonic Fighters was a game that existed. I thought that was just some April Fool's joke kind of. But I never knew.
You better hope they don't do a fucking Virtua Fighter 5 Ultimate Showdown release for Sonic the Fighters, or else you're gonna have to CB there with with Blood. Yeah, it's gonna absorb the delay.
Main Fang. I main Fang in Sonic the Fighters. That's pretty obscure. If you haven't played Sonic the Fighters, it's just like one of the
I remember
characters.
I was thinking about it, like
Wait, Sonic the Fighters originally released when?
It's like 96.
Yeah, in the arcade for 96, but then appeared on the GameCube in 2005 or PlayStation 2 as well. So
I didn't know about the PS2.
I guess.
Sure. Yeah. I'm in. Why not? I'm gonna mess around with that in Lost Judgment. I hope they have a virtual on in Lost Judgment.
I'm just like reading the characters, like Bark the polar bear, Bean the dynamite. Like you just made this up. That guy doesn't exist. It also has Sonic's Tails, Knuckles, Amy, SBO.
Obviously, they're going to bring them back for Sonic Rangers. That's the whole tease.
Yes. And then here's one final note that George put on here about Dying Light 2. I don't have the context other than the title. George, what did you want to talk about for Dying Light 2?
So, Dying Light 2, it's only going to be me who's interested in it at the end of the day. It's a real Marvel's Avengers situation again. But it is in our purview.
Good game. Though.
Yeah, they're like Dying Light 2. Dying Light 1 is arguably one of the best zombie games out there. Like, I love Dying Light 1. And Dying Light 2, believe it or not, they're action RPGs. No, that's definitely not the right word for it. No, they are RPGs. They're like survival horror RPGs. So they count. I'm allowed to talk about it. And they revealed that the release date is December. I think it's 6th, or maybe it's 7th. So like a late one this year. But the gameplay that they showed off, it looks like more Dying Light, and it looks like really, really good. I know there was some like stuff about Techland kind of being a bit crap, like the developers. There was some like in-office stuff there, and I hope that's not. Well, I believe it's true, but I hope it's like resolved a bit more. And Dying Light 2's been not in development hell. It's not as bad as Dead Island 2, but like, you know, people have been waiting on this one for a while,
Development
and
purgatory.
It looks like it's going to live up to it. Yeah, the story of every bloody zombie game apparently. Dead Island 2, Dead Rising 5, which got cancelled, and then Dying Light 2. But Dying Light 2's come out of it, and from the gameplay we saw, yeah, it's like we said about Horizon earlier. It's more of the same, but with some like little tweaks.
Pretty refined,
like
the pretty refined like melee animations, like the drop kicks and whatnot. They look a lot better. Yeah,
drop kick.
Like the melee weapons that they showed off, they look like they have a lot more oomph to them, which looks pretty cool. I think the one part of the presentation that they showed off that really interested me was how they compared like the new standard in Dying Light 2. Like in Dying Light 1, like you usually wanted to like reach the rooftops at nighttime, but now like rooftops in Dying Light 2 are like the standard like of how you're expected to move around. So like if you think about like what was their comparison? Like rooftop levels are like ground level like 0, and being on the ground is like at -1. Like you really don't want to be in the ground on Dying Light 2 because it's a lot more crowded, because you don't have to,
like a classic Sonic game.
Right.
There's our tether.
Because in Dying Light 2, like there's a lot more like human enemies that you have to worry about. It seems like when they were showing off the trailer, like that's to be a big focus now. And I don't know, it looks promising, but I really need to learn more about like how like the structure of the game and in terms of like, because when this was first like unveiled years and years ago, they had like this big choices and consequences like system, and like how is that going to play out? What are the different variations if you're really going to lean into this or pivot into this more like narrative branching perspective? And I thought there's also they also confirmed that co-op can go up to 4 players now in this game as well, so that's cool. Yeah.
Oof. But yeah, this is I know Biomutant, but this does come into one of my most hyped games of the year. I am excited for this. I'll learn my lesson.
Like, but I think it's also reasonable to be wary about this game from all the development trouble stories that we heard about this.
Definitely.
There's a reason that it took so long for it to come out now after being unveiled so long ago.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's not a counter argument, because I completely agree with you, but I'd say if it has a good foundation, because Dying Light 1 is so good, so for me, as long as it's honestly, if it's more Dying Light, that will be enough for me. Whereas like Biomutant, as an argument, that was a new IP that was untested, you know. Not to rag on Biomutant in the last couple of minutes again.
You're just bringing it full circle. Awesome. We started with Biomutant. We end with please don't be like Biomutant.
When you think about like ongoing support,
Sorry.
like Dying Light was fairly well supported over the years. Like they're now releasing this Platinum Edition that has like all the content that's ever come out for that game, and that they added like quite a few things to that game, not just like campaign wise, but like different modes, different just things you can do in that game. Like
Yeah, it was
I
updated
think
for young.
I forgot if they did a battle royale mode for that game, but there's like also like this raid mode or some content that they also recently added, like I think a year ago. Like it's kind of nuts where they went with that.
Yeah, that comes out December 7th of this year. So
Dying Light
7th,
2
yeah.
Stay Human.
yeah, so it'll be like this year's late Cyberpunk only. Please don't be like Biomutant. Please don't be like Cyberpunk. So and yeah, we're at the 3-hour mark now, a little bit past it, and we've made it on time, kind of. We didn't go too much longer than last week, even though we cut the first section a little shorter, so we had time to squeeze all the Dragon Quest stuff in, all the Metal Max stuff in. We went on for too long about Sonic for some reason, but why not? So reaching all the way back to where we opened with, obviously you can read the Biomutant review on the site and go to the YouTube channel and look at the Final Fantasy VII Remake intergrade footage, all of the news that we talked about from the Dragon Quest event, from the Metal Max event, from the Monster Hunter event, from the State of Play is all up on the website. Adam and Kite do a fantastic job keeping that all squared away and organized up on the site at rpgsite.net. You can follow us on Twitter at rpgsite. Alex Donaldson, our boss, has been really pushing the Instagram. He's been playing with a lot of cool artsy, things for the Instagram at instagram.com/rpgsite. Lastly, we do have the Discord link at discord.com/rpgsite or the link at the top of the homepage. But other than that, thanks for listening. We will be back next week. Until then, stay safe, take care. See you next time.